I'd like to call to order the special meeting of the South Burlington School Board on December 13th, 2025. We will, hello. We will start with the Pledge of Allegiance. Give you a second. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And the next thing is announcements. Does anybody have any announcements?
My computer's rebooting, so I'll join you soon.
Okay. And then the next item is reviewing and accepting the agenda. So on the agenda today, we're going to start with comments from the public. And then we have a training with the Vermont School Boards Association. Debbie, can you pronounce your last name?
Singheiser.
Debbie Singheiser will be training us on policy governance and other governance things. And then we're going to adjourn. Are there any comments about the agenda? Great, then we'll move on to the next section, which is comments from the public. There are 3 opportunities for the public to comment during this section about any topic, even if it is not warned on the agenda. Also, before the board takes action on any action item, but only on the topic being actioned. And finally, during a community forum, but only on warned topics, and this is not a community forum. So the board will not respond to public comments unless the meeting is a specially designated community forum and the comment is a topic warned on the agenda. You will be given approximately 3 minutes to comment. Please do not violate anyone's privacy, and an official complaint or grievance cannot be filed during public comment. So do we have any public comment?
What do you hear?
All right.
That's Joe. Joe is.
Are many fans who make time this morning?
All right, seeing no comments from the public, we will now move on to policy governance training and discussion. So welcome, Debbie.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I am sharing my screen behind you, Seamus, so you can, I don't know if you want to, do you want to turn around? I mean, or do you want to sit at the ends?
Sure, yeah, I'll do that. And maybe before you get started,
Sure.
Joe, could you just kind of tell us a little bit about why we are, why you thought it was a good idea for us to have a board retreat?
Yes, I can. So, I've, in my 15 years of being a superintendent, I've had many opportunities with different boards to have board retreats off, moderated by the state's School Board Association. It's a very common thing because the work of a board and the executive team is so important that we need to make sure that we have really an understanding of how we work well together, how we want to communicate, just those sorts of things. So when you hear the word retreat, it's not like we're going out and playing golf and singing Kumbaya. It's really a discussion about how are we going to set the, kind of the ground rules for how we're going to interact with each other, and, what kind of communication flow will we have. I think when boards do that with the executive team, that things run really smoothly. And knowing that this board is, and most of you have been on the board for less than 6 months or so. This is something that I would typically do every year with a board, even if they've been on for years. And I think as you mature, the topics change, but I think it's always a good thing when you have a new superintendent and a new board to get this done as quickly as possible.
And do you have anything how will you know that we've succeeded today?
I will know that we've succeeded. That's a great question. Yeah, by the functioning of a board in a regular meeting. We will have, the board will have good discussion, good debate, but still treat each other in a respectful manner. Communication lines will be followed so that there are no surprises, so that we work through the chain of command if there are issues of minutia that need to be handled. Just in practice, you can tell when when a board is working well because things just go more smoothly. And that's really a horrible answer, I think, but that's my best shot at it.
And is there any board comment about what they're hoping to get out of this and what particular you might want to get answered?
I would just say reinforce things that hopefully we know, or, you know, and have an opportunity to ask questions and have some examples for application would be really good.
And I would say, Joe, just, I think what I got from what you said is that when we know more about what we're doing, it's almost like actually there's less to notice. So I feel like it's more noticeable when we were just kind of figuring things out, and that's when we were trying to like, oh, it's little bumps along the way. So like, I feel like my idea of us running smoothly is that we don't really notice when things, because everything's working right or smoothly. So that's what I'm looking for.
Thank you for that. And I think I've also heard it said that superintendents don't leave districts, they leave boards, right? I think that a good superintendent board relationship will cause continuity, which is good for the district.
Yeah, and we'll get into that, some of those highly effective boards and what do those look like and what are some of the traits of those boards, and everything you've said is totally relevant to that. So I'm glad nobody said anything that I wasn't prepared to talk about. Like if you've asked me to talk about meteorology or something, I would say, well, I think we're done. But no, this is really helpful. And I'll get a little bit more concrete about our goals for today in a couple of slides so that we can, so to answer your question, Seamus, how will we know if we're succeeding? What I like to do is set some goals at the beginning, and then it's kind of like that backward design in education, right? Like, where do we want to be at the end of our time together today? And then design what we do to help us get there. And then how will we know if we get there? Well, that's really up to you guys to decide if we feel like how we did and whether, and chances are you do need more. Every board needs more learning. It's a continual process that never ends. So thank you for having me. Thank you for coming on a Saturday. That was really great. I'm not used to getting up so early on a Saturday morning and driving 1 hour and 45 minutes. And in true honesty, I actually forgot my laptop this morning because I was so unused to this routine. So thankfully, Austin had an extra one, and Nick helped me set everything up. So I'm grateful to these guys for not making me look foolish.
Thank you for making the trip.
Oh, you're welcome. I love doing retreats. I love working with boards. I mean, that segues perfectly into my first slide. I want to tell you a little bit about who I am. I know some of you, well, I know Laura, actually, funny story. Laura and I went to high school together. We didn't even know that. Like for 2 years, we've been working together, and Laura Williams is a very common name. So, but then I was like, Laura, I think we played on the varsity tennis team at Rutland High School. She goes, we did. So funny. So she may know more about me than the rest of you, but she's not here. So I have worked in training or education pretty much my whole career in different capacities, both here in the United States, but also around the world. I am a school board member currently. I've been a school board member on and off for about 10 years, I'd say, maybe a little bit more. My first toe dipping experience was in an international school in Kathmandu, Nepal, which is when I first ran for a school board, which is very different from what we have here in Vermont or anywhere in the United States. But I loved it. I loved the challenges. So when I came back to the United States with my family, we moved back to my home, like not my hometown, but the town next to where I grew up. and my kids started at Barstow, which is a K-8 school, I decided to run for school board. And so the Barstow Unified Union School District is in a SU, a supervisory union, so different from you all. We are in a side-by-side with Otter Valley Unified Union School District. So together we make up Rutland Northeast Supervisory Union. I have something in common with the South Burlington board, as you know. I know Emily knows this, and Jennifer and Joe knows this, and I don't know if Michelle or Seamus, you guys know this, but I was on the board and I was even chair of the Barstow board when we decided to adopt policy governance back in 2018. And I was so fortunate because at the time, John and Miriam Carver, John's now deceased, but he had retired. His wife Miriam was still doing some training, and I got to get trained by her down in Atlanta, and with some of my board members and my superintendent. And it was great. It was the whole reason we decided, yes, we want to do policy governance. So we came back and adopted policy governance. It doesn't happen overnight. It takes a while. But I have to say, working with it, I was very enthusiastic about it, but I don't think I understood the value of it until the pandemic hit. And once we had to navigate through that challenging time as a school board, and I saw the merits of it in terms of really understanding what our roles and responsibilities are as a board and what the superintendent needs from us to navigate that crazy time. That's when I really said policy governance is really something I truly believe in now. I felt like that was the test. So I'm really happy you guys are using it. I applaud you, and I especially applaud you recommitting to it, because I know it hasn't been easy and there's been some backward sliding, and that happens a lot. In fact, I got off the board in 21 and I got back on 3 years later because I saw the sliding happening at my own board. And so I'm trying to get it back on solid ground. And I think we're getting there again. So it's a process. It just never ends.
What do you mean by sliding?
Like, nobody had their policy manual on their desk, during the board meeting. So nobody ever referred to a policy. I mean, these are the policies that tell us what we should be doing as a board, what the superintendent should be doing as a board, and nobody even knew what these policies were. A lot of things that I felt like it was interesting. I mean, we're kind of going off in a rabbit hole here, but I needed a little extra income at the time. So I said, I'd love to be the board secretary for a whole $150. And I went back, and in all honesty, I was just looking for a little bit of money. And I was like, this board has slipped a bit. And it's no fault of anybody, except it was really because we had 2 superintendents, or maybe 1 at that point. And the board had turned over, to the point where I think there was only 1 person that was still there that had served when I was there. So it's the turning over of board members and superintendents that makes the system sometimes it makes the system has to be really strong. And that's why the continual learning is very important, because you need to do it every year. In fact, we do it at every board meeting. We do practice scenarios at every board meeting. I don't want to get into policy governance too much today, because that's not why I'm here. We're definitely going to talk about it, and we'll refer to it a lot. But again, in all transparency, I'm not a certified policy governance trainer. I haven't been certified to train. We have people in the world that do that. And so what I would like to do today, and we'll get to the goals here, but we will refer to the policy governance a bit. And I'm always happy to talk about my experience with policy governance, but there are other people out there that are more qualified to teach it than I am, if that makes sense. We're going to really focus bigger picture. All right, so that's enough about me. I hate talking about myself. So I want to know more about you guys in the room. Really simple. Would love to know, I know you by name already, but how long have you been on this board? I'm curious. I think it's a very new board, except for Laura. And what do you do when you're not here? Like when you're not serving as a school board member? Are you, I mean, you can tell the group about your job, if maybe they don't even know what you do outside the boardroom. Or is it a hobby, you know, something that you do when you're not a school board member? And then what is something that you could teach us to do or learn? And that could be anything. Again, you know, I would use myself as an example. When I'm not serving as a school board member, I work at the Vermont School Boards Association, training school boards. I could teach you all how to cultivate dahlias and how to store your dahlias tubers in the wintertime, and then how to use them year after year after year. I think I have 400 tubers at this point. I have so many. So that's something I can teach you.
Oh gosh, you didn't
I
hear me first.
I'm not, I just have to finish my sentence. I'm looking at you, Emily, but you don't have to go
That's okay.
first.
I think I'll, sure. I'm Emily Hoffman. I've been on the board since March 5th, 2025, so not quite a year.
Yeah.
When I'm not here, I'm a procurement specialist at Twin Craft Skincare, which is a third-party manufacturing company in Winooski, which is a new position for me. I'd previously been at the hospital working there for 10 years, so this is a brand new thing, which has been wonderful, but also has taken my attention away from many other things because I'm just focused on this new role. So I'm excited to be here and kind of get reconnected with the school board. And one thing I could teach you is maybe some yoga. I have a daily yoga practice that is like, it keeps me alive and moving and taking. So that's what I would love to teach you guys if you ever want to learn.
Thank you. That'd be great. Awesome.
So I'm Austin. I'm the most junior member on the board. I joined in late August, early September, I think. What do I do when I'm not serving on the board? I'm an entrepreneur, so I run a web publishing company and do some real estate investing on the side. And what I could teach is skiing, backcountry skiing, and
Oh, wow.
getting out there in nature and finding the woods.
Great. Thank you.
Dan Boyer, I am when I'm not here, the executive director at the Chipton Children's Advocacy Center. Before that, I was a detective there, retired last year. In the summer, I like hanging out by my pool and in the winter skiing. I don't know what I can teach anybody.
How to chill by the pool.
That's easy.
How to do detective work?
Huh?
How to do detective work?
How to do detective work, yes.
Yeah, actually, that is something I'm sure you could teach us. Very valuable too. Thank you. Thanks for sharing. Joe.
I'm not on the board. I'm
Okay.
Joe. I have been a superintendent here for 3 months and a day. Yesterday was my
Wow.
3-month anniversary. I've been a superintendent 15 years though, in a variety of districts in Ohio. If I could teach you one thing, in addition to being a DJ, I was a camp director for 10 years. So I could teach you dozens and dozens of camp songs and games to entertain 150 kids at one time.
Amazing.
Hi, I'm Jen Lawrence, and any questions? Length of service on the board, I have been on the board since also March the 5th, so it's at 9 months, just about, a little over. What do I do when I'm not serving as a school board member? Well, I am an environmental hydrogeologist. I deal with groundwater contamination and remediation. And right now studying different research and development techniques for mitigating chloride in soil and groundwater, which is really interesting. It's a big problem. Let's see, I also, this year has been exciting. I've done a lot of volunteer work since, in addition to being on the school board, I took a master gardener class and I would love to plant dahlias.
Oh, good.
I have not done that yet, but I did master gardening. And now I'm on the board for the Friends of the Hort Farm, the Hort Farm, and I'm also very involved in scouting. And I'm on the board for the Green Mountain Council of Scouts. So I'm trying to get scouts more visible and in schools and that kind of thing. And something that I could teach you that actually, I could teach you how to make sourdough. So I run sourdough. Had to deal with picking up and transporting 4 kids today. They're going and coming from college. I've got 4 kids, or 3 in college. But anyway, I learned how to make sourdough last year and I love it. So this is hot and I'm gonna stick it back there and run some butter. I'm going to, you guys.
We're done.
Oh, what is that? I know. Teach anybody that wants to make that.
Do you have a sourdough starter?
Oh, yeah. And the starter, actually, real quick thing, is a good friend of ours who was a scoutmaster in Texas, who moved to Vermont. He came up a couple of years ago, snowy weekend, and he brought his starter, which is from his family's Jewish bakery in New York. It's over 100 years old.
Oh, wow.
So I've been giving starter to people. I teach you how to make it and then send you on your way, but it is amazing. Happy to.
Oh,
share that.
Jen, thank you for doing that.
That's so cool.
My name is Ally. I've been on the board as a student since May of 2024, I wanna say.
Okay,
You're
the veteran one here.
yes, me and Laura.
Wow.
Yes, when I'm not at board meetings, I go to school, obviously, at the high school.
Yeah.
I'm playing volleyball, working at Bread and Butter Farm in the cafe that's on there. So the thing I could probably teach you all to do is make a really good cup of espresso. I'm really good at latte art too, so I can teach you guys latte art. Yeah, that's very cool.
I'm Omen. I've been on the board since June or July. When I'm not doing stuff with the board, I spend a lot of time interacting with the science community in Vermont. I've been doing research at UVM, taking up a lot of time. And one thing I could teach is soccer. I play a lot of soccer.
Good.
I'm Michelle Boyer. I've with Austin been on the board since the middle of August.
Yeah.
When I'm not serving as a school board member, my area is educational research, measurement, and accountability, and I work for a testing company based out of Minnesota. I've spent the better part of the last 3 years primarily focused on the development of an early literacy screener, screening for reading difficulties and dyslexia. Among other things, I work very often with state departments of ed. And a growing number of districts because that assessment is connected to an interim assessment. So we work a lot with districts. One thing I could teach a 5-year-old how to ski. I coach on the weekends, the 5-year-olds at Smugglers Nut Ski Club. Have a ball. Started last year, and I don't know how I haven't been doing that my whole life. It's so fun.
Oh, that's great. That was wonderful. Do they still teach pizza? Like you
We tell no pizza,
No
no
pizza.
pizza.
no pizza.
No, that's
Okay.
one of the primary things we work with them on is to get their parallel turns
As quickly as possible.
as quickly as possible, right?
Mhm.
They
Can you
get
teach a 45-year-old?
the difference, the only difference is the fear factor.
Yes.
Yeah, the 45-year-olds are terrified to learn how to ski and the 5-year-olds are made out of
Yep.
rubber.
Yeah.
Could you bring a 55-year-old pizza?
I'll join the pizza party.
Great. Well, that'll keep you young, huh?
Telling you, they're awesome.
Thank you. Seamus.
I'm Seamus Absher. I've been on the boards with this recent crop since March. When I'm not on the board, I'm a founder at a tech company here in Burlington called Faraday. And so, I actually spend a lot of time writing software. And I'll mention one thing I also do because it's connected to 5-year. I started coaching my daughter's soccer team. And I feel the same way. It's like, why have not? It's like, it's the best thing ever. And one thing I could teach you is how to take documents, audio files, meeting minutes, contracts, and scan them, OCR them, summarize them, search them, all that stuff, which has been relevant.
And
for-
organizing our whole digital lives, it sounds
Yeah.
like, that'd be great. That'd be very helpful. We might hire you at the VSBA, that would be great. Thank you. Do you guys want to take a break and eat some of Jen's bread? While it's warm, I know,
Well, we can just grab it and bring it back.
yeah, grab it and bring it back and then we can keep going. But yeah, when you said warm sourdough, oh my gosh. With butter. What's that, Dan? Yeah, I know. I love bread.
I just learned,
Did you ever do anything like this before? Did you know this about your board members, like what they do for jobs and stuff?
I don't think we had done it all together. Like I had picked up on things with individual conversations. but
Yeah.
It's very nice. I love knowing when people.
I do too. I feel like that puts a whole different.
Here's the thing,
Oh.
I was, my college degree is anthropology,
Wow.
so I'm all about.
Yeah.
That when people talk about.
Yeah, yeah,
They start.
yeah. It's important because we are so much more than who we are in this room, doing this work. I mean, it's easy to forget. That's okay.
Seamus, tell me about Faraday.
So,
You're the CTO, the founder.
we basically will take a company's customers. And sometimes also their leads or their prospects. And we will enrich them with like household income, age. Shopping style, marital status, so like we're a registered data broker. But then in addition to that. We also build predictive models, so they'll be like, well, here are my they'll have like a CSV of their customers and a CSV of their leads. And we'll build a lead score, and then we can either deliver the lead score straight into their CRM. And or we can reveal a real-time API that's, as the leads come in, we'll score them immediately, and that'll use like. All the demographic data that we have, so we have 1,500 attributes of all US adults. And then they can also bring their own,
Right.
like, channel, source, whatever, and so we'll mix it all into the same model.
What are some examples of companies you've worked with? Like, I
Um,
totally understand that. Just curious
Like-
what industries you specialize in, or if it's agnostic.
so like, it's basically home services, insurance, financial, so like AIG is a client. A lot of like Full and Branch, which makes like, so like e-commerce. Gorjana is like a jewelry company. But my favorite part of the business is, when instead of serving brands, we serve software companies. So we're like the predictive engine inside of like Cord Commerce, EverCommerce, WeCommerce. Like the top mortgage CRM, the top field service management for like door-to-door canvassing. Like we're like they sell AI features and they're just reselling us.
Right.
And that's the best business to be in.
Very cool.
And recently, we started in like traditional machine learning, and now there's this whole Gen AI thing. And so it's been a humongous learning and total change of the world, because we're all learning, and it's been like, learning how to like, use Notebook LM for board work has helped me in my job. And then my job is like helping me with board work, because it's like, how do you take 15 years of minutes and find instances of non-compliance? Well, I can tell you, like.
Have you started referring to Claude as a developer that you work with?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it was me and Claude.
Well, and anytime you're writing anything or doing any research, it's like, I think it's everybody should break through the barrier of. Like, will I know how to work with Claude? Like, will I give up? And it's like, no, you should just do it, and. That's like what, with my employees, I'm like. Now my one-on-ones with them, I'm like, show me how you use Claude and ChatGPT and all that stuff, and it's like, it's a totally different world than it was 2 years ago. See, that's that fear reaction.
My eyes, you
Yeah.
saw? Makes all my emails sound way better, I'll tell you.
I know, right?
Type it out, copy it, paste it, make this sound better, and stuff. So I'm on my way, I'm just taking baby steps.
Absolutely.
Seamus introduced me to ChatGPT. I heard of it, but you were the one that said, do such and such on ChatGPT. And it was like.
Your whole world is
the
changed.
world has changed.
It really is.
It's
I use
amazing.
synchronicity sometimes.
I haven't heard of
Even though that one, yeah, that one's been helpful in writing testimony because it helps you find, it sources everything, it cites everything.
This is the world we live in, like, you could hear about a tool like that, I actually need that for something I'm doing, like, it just, you give it a text and it finds you sources.
Yeah, yeah,
It's pretty awesome.
yeah. And then you can look them up and realize, oh, this research is from Australia, so I don't think it's gonna work in the Vermont context, so. That's why I think it's called, but don't quote me on that, cause I may be wrong about the name of it. I'll find out and let you know. All right, getting back to the reason we're here. First of all, amazing Fred. Hello. Thank you for sharing that with us. That is amazing.
When are we gonna have a class on?
Yeah,
Yeah,
you should teach us,
Next time.
especially with a 100-year-old starter. Good Lord. So these are some session guidelines, just suggestions that I use when I go around and work with boards, to help make our time productive, really. And these are good ones also, I think, to follow during board meetings. So if you like these, then you could think about codifying them in your policies or just putting them on your agendas, like at the top, just as a reminder of how we're going to behave. And I like these, and we'll go through them one by one. So listen with an open mind. This is really about holding back judgment and really listening to each other. I don't know if I'm sure you've heard the Franklin Covey expression, seek first to understand before you're understood. So it kind of gets at that. Take space, make space. This is kind of an introvert extrovert thing where some of us, we might be more reserved and reluctant to say things right away. So we need to challenge ourselves to get out there and say something or ask a question, be a little bit more bold. Whereas others, they jump right in, they feel confident and they're ready to say something. And so I like to challenge those people to just hold their comment and their thought for a moment and then let somebody else jump in and say something. So challenge yourself to kind of go against your natural instinct is what I'm asking you to do. Being fully present is as simple as putting away phones or putting them on silent. I think it's so rare, as we were just talking about technology, it's interesting. It's so rare that we as adults, not the students so much, but we as adults get this opportunity to do something just for ourselves, some learning, right, for us. And so it's really great to be fully present in this experience that we're having together. Practice this saying yes and. When we are listening to somebody and we want to give an opinion that's maybe not what they are saying, that word but can sometimes be very off-putting and put your listener on the defensive. It's so amazing when I became aware of this yes and instead of but, I was like, now I listen to it all the time in debates and meetings. And I just noticed body language when somebody uses that word, but the person that said something just starts to tense up all of a sudden, like you just see them go into defensive mode. So I love this trying to say yes and because it helps people realize that you've heard what they said. You're not necessarily agreeing with them, but at least you're recognizing that they said something. And that word but kind of just taking it out of that sentence really helps smooth a conversation out. And then enjoy the learning journey. This is something that I hope you'll learn things today, and I hope that you'll enjoy the whole experience. Anybody want to add anything as a session guideline? We don't have members of the public here, so it's kind of like relaxed and nice, you know, to be in this situation. So I'm open to any suggestions, but hopefully these might be ones that you might want to consider for some of your future board meetings, right?
Nick, by the way, do we have anybody online?
I have one additional guideline.
Yep.
2 of the toilets in the women's restroom working. So only one is working, so one at a time, or go upstairs or use the men's, because there's only a few of us. That's a guideline.
That's a good guideline. That's a great guideline. All right, so I said that we'd jump into, or we would go a little bit deeper into what what Joe and I talked about when we were planning this retreat. So when we were meeting, we talked about 3 kind of discrete training goals. Well, and they all popped up at once. How about that? So the first is creating a foundation for strong board superintendent relationship, what I like to call a partnership, which is what Joe mentioned earlier when he was talking about one of the things he hopes to get out of this retreat today. This is a really important one. There's been some research on school board governance and what makes an effective school board. There's one paper in particular that I like, and I can leave you with copies of it. It's called 8 Characteristics of Effective School Boards. I'll even pass it around. It was published by the National School Boards Association. And what it does is it identifies 8 different traits of what they call a highly effective school board. And these school boards operate in districts that tend to have higher student achievement than boards that are not as effectively functioning. They are in districts where the student achievement rates are not as strong. So they're really starting to find some correlation between school board governance and student achievement. And there's not a lot out there. Like I said, it's kind of a new area, but what they're finding is very interesting. These 8 characteristics are all in that paper, but I find that one of the most important ones, they're all important, is this one, and I'll read it out loud. It speaks to the board superintendent partnership. Effective school boards lead as a united team with the superintendent, each from their respective roles with strong collaboration and mutual trust. So effective school boards lead as a united team with the superintendent, each from their respective roles with strong collaboration and mutual trust. So I know Michelle was at the conference, and Jen and Joe, that was really very much focused on this trait of school boards. We talked a lot of the workshops and keynote speakers was all about how we build this solid relationship, hopefully a partnership that's based on mutual trust and respect between the board and the superintendent. And this is really critical in effective governance. So that's one, and with the new superintendent, it's really great to get that foundation built at the outset. And once that foundation is there, you're set up really well for future success, I'd say. Roles and responsibilities. We're gonna focus on good, or sometimes you hear the word effective governance, and what it is, how we know it when we see it. And our end goal as a board should always be achieving this good governance, this state of having strong governance. And while we will, as I said, be referring to policy governance because you are using it, that isn't the focus of today's training. As I said earlier, there are people out there who are certified to teach the technicalities of policy governance. And, but since I've been using it for a long time and I've had some training and you guys are using policy governance, we're gonna still talk about it. I just won't be able to dive into the technicalities of it today. Carolyn Oliver, and just to go a little bit deeper with this policy governance and how it is relevant to governance. Have you ever seen this book?
We all got a copy of it.
Great, I'm so pleased. She describes policy governance as a vehicle, and it's the means of transportation to get you somewhere. So she takes the example of a bicycle, and where she says walking and riding a bicycle are two very different means of getting somewhere, walking your bicycle and riding it. And similarly, governing using a traditional style of governance, which is what most school boards use, is one way of getting to the state of good governance. Policy governance is another way, but they're very different. Okay, so we're all trying to achieve this state of good governance and operating effectively as strong boards. But the way we do it as a school board varies depending on those who are following kind of a more traditional governance model than those of us who follow the policy governance model. So it's really not the destination itself, policy governance isn't, but it's the means to get us there. Does that make sense?
Can I say something about that?
Sure.
So, like, I think in the founding of the US, it's like life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. How do we get there? Separation of powers. So policy governance, I think, is separation of powers.
Mhm.
We're legislative, you're executive, you know, so I think of it as a analogy to how the Constitution of the United States works.
Good. Mention that to your policy governance trainer, whether it's Susan or Jeannie in the future, because that would be interesting. Yeah, I think every school board in Vermont's capable of practicing good governance. I think those that are truly following policy governance are more likely to be successful. That's my biased opinion, but I mean, of course, traditional governance boards work very effectively. If you have a strong chair who knows what they're doing, a strong superintendent, and you follow those 8 characteristics, you'll be fine. I just think policy governance really helps you get there. Sorry for talking with my mouth full. Are you all doing the board accelerator now? Have you has anybody finished it?
I
Okay.
started.
You started. So you know, at the end of the board accelerator, after you guys have finished that, you're entitled to an hour free coaching from Susan Mogensen. And she'll probably do that virtually because she's in Canada. But she wanted me to remind you that that is part of the subscription fee, is that when you're finished as a board, let me know, or I can put you in touch with her. We're done. Now we'd like to have our free 1-hour coaching call with you, if you will. And that's a great chance to ask her some questions about policy governance in those modules.
I would think, if I can just add real quick.
Yeah.
I have not started it yet. I know you finished it. I don't know where everybody else stands. I'm hoping to have some time over the holidays, but for me, I am driven by schedules. It would be nice to have like let's everybody try to get it done by this day so we can do that. That would help me. Because otherwise I'm prioritizing other things over it that do have due dates. So-
And it doesn't
The
take
modules
long.
have due
No.
dates.
What was that?
Don't the modules have due dates? I think they have dates already.
Oh, do they? Yeah, see, I keep getting the Brown Dog Consulting reminder, but I like.
I don't think the actual modules have deadlines. I think the whole course has a deadline. And it's a generous deadline, so you probably want to get it done sooner than whatever it was. It doesn't take long, right, Austin? Like the whole course takes 4 hours, maybe?
It took me longer than that, but I agree,
did.
it's not,
It's not.
not dozens of hours.
Yeah, it's not too bad. And you would probably zip through it faster because you went through the policy governance training in the fall, in the spring.
Right.
Yeah,
If the board is amenable to a addition to the agenda, we could take action
Okay.
and set a deadline for Jen.
I appreciate a deadline too. I haven't finished it, no, so, and other things have, you know, taken my attention.
Should we agree that like Jan one?
Enough deadlines.
Okay.
I'm done with mine, but I don't know if you need the board to tell her to get it done.
Just get it, well, I mean, even if we say when we're gonna bring in the consultant from Canada, that would be helpful because we can't do it until,
Right.
Yeah.
so.
Okay.
So Seamus, we'll be in touch. You can let me know. We'll set up something with Susan. And then that'll be the deadline. Yeah. Great. All right, so
Motion
communication.
fails.
Motion fails. We're removing it from the table. So our third objective today is this communication skills as education leaders. So we know we have so much uncertainty and division in our world today, especially in public education. So I feel like it's more critical than ever that we are strong leaders, and part of being a strong leader is really honing our communication skills. So I have an exercise that I want to do with you all at the end. That's really fun to work on these communication skills.
Can I say one more thing about that? And this is my opinion.
Yeah.
It's just my opinion. We on the board are elected official politicians, and so when we think about being leaders, I think we should talk about what it means to be a politician, not just, you know, like a governor. Just my opinion. We can get through.
Okay. Sounds like a good plan. All right, everybody fine with these goals? All right, let's get started then. So let's dive right in with roles and responsibilities. So here are two questions. I want to consider these words generically, not thinking about school boards or governance or education, but sometimes it helps to start with just the basic definition of words, of terms. We often use roles and responsibilities in the same sentence, and I do it, the roles and responsibilities of school board, without our really thinking about the difference between these two words. So let's just spend a couple minutes talking about what these words mean in general. What I usually have you do is break into small groups, talk about it, come back to the group, but honestly, we're such a small group. You want to just shout them out? Does somebody want to take a minute to think about them? Collect your thoughts. Should have given you some scrap paper to write stuff down.
I have lots of scrap
Yeah.
paper. I'm a note taker.
Yeah, I am too. I love. And
Yeah.
And I'm happy just to share little scraps of paper that you guys can use to write on, and then just pitch them after you're done.
Take some, pass it around.
This is really a great way to get rid of old paper without feeling guilty. Except when they're double-sided like this, that's.
Yeah.
I can't, in one ear, out the other. I don't.
You're welcome. Look, you even got one of those stapled together. Yeah, this makes me feel less guilty about printing. I know people are gonna use it. So yeah, write down just a couple thoughts about what is a responsibility in your opinion, in your mind, when somebody says responsibility, what comes to mind? And what is a role? And not the yummy, delicious kind that Jennifer who might bake us, but an ROLE.
Just remember, anything you write down is subject to FOIA.
Not if it's on scrap paper. That goes straight into the bin.
Probably I can keep this very face. That was a good.
Yeah, no chat GPT.
Sorry, is that nasty?
generically speaking, what is a responsibility? Let's just start with that one since it's first. What when you think of the word, what comes to mind?
Something you're accountable for,
Something you're accountable for, yeah?
or that you like have ownership over.
A specific area or task that needs to get done by the person in the room.
Specific area task that has to get done by the person in the role. Yeah, Seamus.
So the way that humanity moved from the cave to civilization is by splitting work up. And so responsibility is where you say, okay, you do this and I'll do that. And the sum is greater than the parts. So it's. I love this.
Everything's gonna come back to anthropology, isn't that? It's gotta be helpful as a board member, in all honesty.
I said like an actionable expectation.
An actionable expectation.
Yeah.
Yeah, somebody has an expectation of you, or you have it of yourself, maybe, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, accountability. Anything else people want to contribute?
Well, one other thing is, I had an employee who quit because they were given responsibility without authority. And so if there's a disconnect between the things that you're accountable for, responsible for, and the things that you can actually affect, it makes your life very difficult. So it's important that responsibility and authority go together.
Or in this context, the role, right? So like the role.
Well, that,
The role implies the responsibility to execute, or the role implies the authority to execute responsibilities.
that's what, just to segue into that, I said that the role is a position that has understood authority for something. Not that if anyone else has responsibility, thank you, but.
Yeah,
And I think
that's
the point
good.
you made relative to others, right? It's the area of authority relative to the other areas that make up.
I mean, but ultimately, it's usually one person who has the responsibility to make sure something gets done. You can delegate the authority for somebody to do something. So you as the boss, you can delegate the authority to one of your employees to get something done, but the ultimate responsibility for a product that you might be developing for one day.
Ideally,
Right,
Yeah,
ideally. it is-
ideally, so
is
there's one
yours.
person.
Right.
Gemini says it's the role is the hat you wear, or responsibilities are the things you do while wearing the hat.
The hat you wear and the responsibilities are the things you do while wearing that hat. That is interesting. Yeah,
Gemini.
Gemini. I used as I think Merriam-Webster's dictionary. I love Merriam. Some of these things we said. I think Ally said it was an expectation or something that has to get done, so it's a duty to deal with something. Or having control over something or someone is one suggested definition. There's Michelle's word or Emily's word, accountability, right? It's you're accountable for something, whether things turn out well or not, right? And that goes back to what you were saying, but the example of, or was it Dan that said it, where you give the authority to somebody to do a task or play a role, but ultimately you are responsible. You have to be accountable for how the thing turns out as the big boss, right? So the role is the part that's played. As soon as I see the word role, my mind goes to theater. I don't know, just like as a role that you play, a part that you play, the job or the task that someone or something has in a particular situation. So it's like what you do when you're wearing a certain hat.
Can I just say one thing, because I often do RACI charts, so responsible, accountable, consulted, informed.
Yeah.
And I always think as accountable is the person who owns it, responsible is the person who does it. So there's a difference. Sometimes the responsible person is also accountable, but sometimes it's distinct.
separate.
It's separate,
Mhm,
right?
mhm.
So I think it's, yeah, considering that context.
Policy governance training mentions that very thing. We have a good discussion about the responsibility versus accountability. This session.
Yeah, I think one of the earlier sessions, they talk about that. Yeah, yeah, that's a really good point.
Yeah, if somebody owns it,
Yeah,
and then somebody does it.
yeah, yeah,
And sometimes it is one and the same, and
It-
sometimes it's not.
yeah. Absolutely, absolutely. It really just depends on the situation. So now that, let's now think about these two terms in terms of our work as board members. So let's take responsibility. We're gonna spend the next few minutes just looking at responsibility, and then we're gonna move into roles. But responsibility is a big one. So I just put the definition back up there. Having a duty, having control, being accountable or blamed for something. So in the context of our work, what is a board responsible for?
A board generally or our board specifically?
School boards.
Hiring a superintendent.
Yeah,
Approving a budget that the taxpayers support.
Setting policy.
setting policy,
Taking any action to ensure the sound administration of the district.
taking any action to assure the sound administration of the district. Great, excellent. Other thoughts?
It's like, there's a Vermont law that says there's like a list and it's like the budget
Mhm.
and it's,
The duties.
yeah, setting educational policy, like you said.
Would it be too specific to say we are responsible for making sure that the superintendent has a clear direction in the authority and ability to execute those tasks?
Not at all. Not at all.
I think the board also has the responsibility of having the interaction with the owners.
Mhm.
Right?
That community engagement, ownership linkage in policy governance parlay. Yeah. Very important.
Monitoring
Monitoring, monitoring what, Michelle?
compliance with the policies.
Compliance with
And
policy.
the, well, specifically the ends, but also the executive branch.
Yeah.
And something we've never talked about. Board as well.
Yep, your own board
We're not
policies,
monitoring, we haven't, but.
and we can. Yeah.
So in the state law, it's determine educational policies, take any action required for sound administration, possession, care, control, and management of property, keep school buildings and grounds in good repair, system of accounting, budgeting. I love this one, and I think it's very interesting. Shall exercise the general powers given to a legislative branch of a municipality. Getting back to this thing that we're like, we are like a quasi legislators. We execute contracts. We allow any high school student who meets the academic requirements of the high school to graduate and receive a diploma in less than 4 years. Oh, that's a very specific thing. I thought it was just general proficiency. Apply for grants. Engage in short-term borrowing. Inform the electorate about the budget.
Yeah, those are all great. I'm so glad you pulled up the statute because it's making me think immediately of the essential work of Vermont school boards and the 6 different pillars that a board what we did, and it was before my time, what we did with that statute is we kind of grouped those different tasks or roles into themes. So there's something in there called financial oversight, budgeting and financial oversight. So, and then there's something called policy, just policy. And so that speaks to the law. So that's a great kind of summary of our roles as a school board. And we'll get into those. But going back to this idea of responsibility, I hear what you're saying, like we're kind of, I liked what you were saying before about what we're responsible for as a board. Sound administration, the community engagement part of it, blah, blah, blah. Let's think about now the other side of the coin, which is our superintendent. And in case of policy governance, we call them the CEO, right? So what do you think, if we're responsible for those things that you guys mentioned earlier, what in the world is the CEO responsible for? What do they have a duty to do or have control over, or what are they accountable for?
In the ends.
Meeting the ends, yes, good job in policy governance, that's exactly right. And if you're traditional governance, it would be like meeting the district's priorities, right? The goals that are set in
The strategic plan.
the strategic plan or the continuous improvement plan. Yep.
According to the Vermont statutes, number one, carry out the policies adopted by the school boards related to educational or business affairs.
Right,
2, prepare for adoption by the school board plans to achieve the educational goals and objectives.
Mhm.
Nominate licensed employees.
Mhm.
I guess that means like hiring teachers or people who need,
Mm-hmm.
provide data
Mhm.
to the Secretary of Education, I think.
I would also say to the board, so you can monitor. Mhm.
Right. Prepare itemized report detailing budget.
To help ensure that it's passed, that you adopt it as a board and then it's assure its passage.
Right. Help to implement and develop policies regarding minimum and optimum average class sizes. And arrange for professional training is required separately in the statute.
Again, really good menu of tasks, roles that a superintendent should play. What is the responsibility of the superintendent?
That's the operation.
Operations.
Generally speaking, yes, operations managing. Let me look at this. I like to think of it like this, looking at these two different terms, governance versus management. So, it's really important that we understand the difference between these two terms and who is responsible for what. Governance, which you see there on the left side, is very much the responsibility of the board. The board must govern. That is our responsibility, is to govern our district. The superintendent must manage, and that includes those day-to-day operations and the different tasks, the many different tasks that go into running and operating a district. And, you're anthropology. I'm wondering, like, did you ever do etymology, the study of words?
Not correctly.
So I'm a little bit of a geek when it comes to this. I like looking up to see where words come from. So I just happened to look up governance a few years ago to see what does this mean? And it's actually from the Greek language and it means to steer. So that's why I put it in parentheses. And so I think of like steering a ship, or in the case of a district, it's like steering an ocean liner because it's big and it takes a long time to turn. But yeah, we're definitely as a board trying to steer and ensuring that we're heading in the direction that is where our owners have told us to head into, right? We're really looking at the road or at the horizon out in front of us down here. We're not so much here as we are out there. Sometimes because of statute, we have to be here in the present in terms of passing our budgets and monitoring and all that business. But we also have that added responsibility of looking ahead to the future. What are the students of our district going to need to be successful when they leave here? And what are they going to need, not just next year, but like 5, 10, 15 years down the road? So it's a really important role, an important responsibility that if we don't do it, then there's really nobody else in the district who's going to do it. Whereas management is a Latin word. And it means to hand or handle. So that makes sense, right? When you think of managing, it's like handling all those minutia, all those day-to-day tasks that have to get done. And again, Joe's not doing all of these tasks single-handedly, no pun intended, but he's actually delegating a lot of those tasks to his team, to his admin team, and then they're delegating down below. So, but ultimately, yes, you are responsible as the superintendent, as the CEO of the successful management of the district. So they're different, but they're both essential to the successful, to the success of a school district. And effective boards really focus on this governance role and steps aside and leaves the management up to the CEO to do what they need to get done. And this is, remember I talked about pandemic, what we saw during the pandemic in our district. This actually was what saved us. I felt like we were very much like, there wasn't a whole lot for a board to do during the pandemic. It was about that day-to-day crisis management. So we just stepped out of the way and said, you let us know when we need to know something. But we know the information coming from the AOE and from everywhere else, the governor, Washington, is coming in so fast and furious that you couldn't possibly keep us updated on everything. And that's okay, because we trust you. And so you just need to let us know when you need us for something. And so that was why I felt like we were so aware of that difference of this. We knew our role was governing and steering. And during a pandemic, it really wasn't possible to steer into the future. We were like just trying to survive that year and get through that year. So the board kind of had a role that wasn't so significant. We were called upon to make decisions, yes, but it wasn't, the day-to-day stuff was so all-consuming that we just felt like we don't need to have a board meeting every single day. We're fine. We know you've got this, superintendent, CEO. Comments? Yeah.
I think there's also a political responsibility on the governance side, in the sense of like, if there's a controversial thing, then it's inappropriate for management to make a decision about it, because management should both have the legitimacy of having the community decide about something that's controversial, and also the political cover to say, look, I'm just doing what the community told me to do. So I think that on the school board side, when we differentiate between governance and management, we should also mention that a big part about governance is representation and gathering what the community wants, and also to some extent building consensus, which is, actually, I think people have objected when we say that our role is like selling something. And so I don't think it's about selling. It's about figuring out where the community is, trying to help the community to understand where it wants to go. And so that's very much, and that's important that management does not do that, because management is not accountable. Like, management cannot be run out in an election. Like, you can't recall a superintendent if they're doing things that are controversial. And so that's a line.
I'll push back on that just a little bit, because I think it depends on the controversy.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, the biggest controversies I've seen in my career as superintendent is firing a coach or a band director, right? And that is not the role of the board, right? The superintendent is to choose the staff. And so I think where their struggle is when superintendent and team make the decision that we need to move on from this person, and invariably all the people that love the people in the community come to the board to say this shouldn't happen. That's what I believe where the board needs to let the superintendent make the decision about hiring the staff or firing the staff.
I have a response to that, but I'll let anybody else go.
Well, let's hold this
Sure.
discussion and put it in the parking lot for just a minute, because we're gonna come to that chain of authority and accountability, which also looks very similar to the chain of command and chain of communication. So let's definitely, that'll help us with this discussion, and then let's debate this again. Moving on, because I don't want to get too held up because we've got a lot to do. I wanted to put this up here because you have your policy governance board. So John Carver's definition of governance should make sense to you. It's the process by which a small group of persons, who's that small group of persons? Us, you, the board, acting on behalf of an organization. Who's the organization?
Organization
district.
The district, yeah, your South Burlington School District, acting on behalf of the South Burlington School District's owners. Who are the owners?
The citizens.
Yep, your voters, your taxpayers. Cause that organization, the school district, to achieve what it should and to avoid what is unacceptable. How does those two terms, to achieve what it should and avoid what is unacceptable, how does that relate to policy governance, or what is that referring to in policy governance?
The achievement or the ends,
Yeah.
and what is unacceptable are the executive limitations.
Beautiful. I can tell you did a great job on that online course. Good job. It paid off, Austin. Awesome. Yes, exactly. So you can see, I would show that definition of governance to a traditional board. A board that's following traditional governance, because this is what it is. The vocabulary is a little bit different. The terminology, owners, they might be like, what the heck is an owner? But this is sound. This is very sound. And I put the shift up there only because it refers back to that idea that we're steering our district in a direction towards a vision that was enumerated by our owners.
This is also the kind of the definition of representative democracy,
Yeah.
or
Yeah, for sure, absolutely. But I'm gonna push back on the word representative in a little bit. You'll see where I'm going. So this is something that's kind of silly, but take a guess. How many school board members does it take to put in a
Zero.
light bulb?
it's impossible for us to screw in a light bulb. It's operations.
You're too scared, really. None, exactly. And why is that, as Austin said? It's operations. So, and it's really up to the board to say, hey, we need light.
It's a little grandiose. Putting it on high pedals to let there be light.
Let there be light, Joe. Turn the
That's it?
lights on, Joe.
Yeah.
Yeah, no. Let there be light. The school board definitely, well, let's look at the next slide. So it's up to the superintendent to decide what kind of light, once you say let there be light, then he has to say, all right, I think we should buy fluorescent light bulbs or candles or whatever. Then does Joe himself light the lights? No, most of the time, no. He usually designates his or her staff to do that. So, school boards are responsible for articulating the why the South Burlington School District exists. Do you guys sit around and decide what that why is? Hopefully not. Hopefully you're getting that input from your community, your owners, who are saying, this is what we want for our district. This is what we want. They help you develop your ends policy, right? In traditional governance, we call it the vision. You guys are here to help the community answer the question, why does this school district exist? Then once you have that vision in place, then the board let's hire somebody very capable to figure out how that vision is going to get implemented. So how are we going to reach our vision, our global end statement? And in the context of public education, this means that you're helping Joe out by reminding him what the vision is, what the global ends looks like. you're holding them accountable for that because, right, it's the CEO that's responsible for making sure the global ends are someday met. But you're enabling him to get his work done. And how do you enable him? You step out of the way and you let him decide the what and the how, if this work is gonna get done. You're not shirking your responsibility by saying, go have fun. You've actually set up some guardrails, and those are the ELs that you've set up. And you're monitoring. I'm looking at Michelle because you mentioned the term monitoring earlier. You're monitoring the progress of the results of how the district is doing in terms of moving towards its ends policy. And obviously the superintendent isn't doing this all by himself. He's got his admin team behind him, and then below the admin team, you've got all the staff in the district. So another way to kind of look at this from another analogy or metaphor, if you will, is I always like to think of the board standing on a balcony overlooking the landscape. And we need to be able to look out and see the whole picture. We're less interested in seeing the individual rocks and the trees that are below us. What we're looking at is the whole picture. We're really trying to keep that big picture, that far off future in mind. So that's why we're standing at the balcony with the kind of that sometimes you'll hear somebody refer to the board as being at the 30,000 foot view, like we need to stay at that 30,000 foot view. And I think that kind of gets to this. Because that's all part of our governance responsibility, is to stay up high and continue to look out and see that bigger picture. Joe's off the balcony, he's down below. He's down there, you know, he's very much interested in all those individual aspects of what's down there. But we are up here.
I love the analogy too of just, we set the rudder and you're looking at the map, you're, looking at the horizon.
Yep.
You're on your ship.
Yep.
You're setting the rudder, right?
Yep.
And then there, you've got operations that are pulling sails and all of that other stuff, all the hand, right?
Yep. Feeding the
Steering.
coal into the furnace that,
Yeah.
in a steamship or whatever, yeah.
So you got your steering and the hand. And
Yeah.
just to have that perspective.
Yep.
But it is looking at the map and kind of figuring things out and having your view on the horizon.
Right,
Right.
right.
And then just to keep going on that analogy, if Joe chose some coal that was backing up into the building and making everybody sick, the monitoring is how the board would look at that and say, this isn't gonna work for the future, like
You're killing us.
This is not.
People are falling over.
I know, sorry, Joe. Joe, I know who wouldn't do that. I'm
People are
just,
jumping overboard.
yeah. I'm just,
Yeah.
saying that there are ways that the future is affected by what the operations are happening at this moment, and like how the monitoring is the way that the board is able to.
Yes, to help get back
Right.
into the course that we were on. Or maybe the future has changed. And then it's up to the board to say, things are very different now. Post-pandemic world looks really different from the pre-pandemic world.
We're changing our bearing.
We need to get our owners back together again and really think about what is critical to our students now. I'll give you an example from our district. Before the pandemic, our global end statement is very much about the holistic, having a student who's prepared for the future. And when we met with our owners to talk about what does that look like, a lot of it was character building, right? A lot of it had to do with be a good learner, be happy, follow your passion. I mean, the academic stuff wasn't rising to the top. It was all this other kind of stuff that people were talking about, wanting to see students once they leave our district to be on solid ground for the next step in terms of social emotional. And then more recently, we haven't rewritten our global end statement, but we have gone back to the owners and asked them, what are your priorities now? And they said, academic. Our kids are falling behind. I mean, so there's an example of how the future has changed, right? And so we as a board now are very much focused on the act and getting that back on course. We gotta get our kids to read at grade level. And do math at grade level, because that hurt us. That pandemic really took us off our course. So,
I get this, but I like the idea of like a crow's nest instead. You know, the crow's nest that's
Yeah.
on the top of a boat?
I've had, oh,
You know what I
you
mean?
guys lived on a boat. Huh.
Right?
Yeah,
That's what I'm thinking, like when
Yeah.
I'm thinking of that, like, cause you're up high.
Yeah.
You're not in it necessarily, but you're
No.
up there to see that horizon.
You see what's coming ahead. You see there's a storm on the horizon.
Iceberg.
Yeah, iceberg, right? I know.
Can I
And Wales.
ask for some specifics? I mean,
Sure.
in this view, I'm curious to translate this to this board.
Yeah.
And your experience. If we were to say, you know, two things, right? One, let's say we adopt that same focusing back on academics. I'm curious how that has gone in your experience on the board and how you would, you know, if that was a transition we want to make, how you would recommend we do that in this framework. And then additionally specific to our district or Vermont is the redistricting conversation. And this is something we are seeing coming
I know.
or could be coming, and it's
Could be
vague
coming.
how far it is off. How in this framework should we think about that?
So such a good question and not easy to answer. How are we doing in terms of repositioning ourselves in terms of academics? I mean, that, as I said, the end statement is the same. I think what's shifted is the interpretation of it. So like before, it was a broader definition. I think we're kind of, or a broader interpretation. I think what I'm hearing from the superintendent and what we are in agreement with is that this is really has to be about academic achievement at this point. And are we there yet? No, because the test scores are still not where they should be. But one way we can influence that or impact that is through the budgeting process and making sure that the resources are in place to ensure that there's enough staff in the district that can help the what is the term when we've lost ground and we're trying to catch up again in academia? It's called
Regression?
but it's the catching up part.
Oh, okay.
I forget, there's a term that we use. But basically, we know that this is our priority, so we need to ensure that we have an adequate resources so that there's adequate staff and adequately trained staff, the right type of staff in the building to help our students with their academics, making sure the right curriculum is in place, right? And so there's all that kind of thing that we're putting in place now. But the results, we just don't even had enough time to see the results yet.
Would it be? Should we think about changing the end statements to reflect that? Because what I heard you say is, right, we've kept the end statement the same, we're
Yeah.
interpreting it differently.
Yeah,
But that feels like a human solution to it, where it's like, as long as everybody on the current board agrees with that new interpretation and they communicated that with the current superintendent, that's an
Right.
agreed upon way to. But there's turnover, right? There's
I know.
new superintendents, there's new boards. So in that situation, wouldn't it be better to
revise the
redo the
ends,
end statement so that it
Maybe.
can be more durable for that?
maybe,
Because as more people will come in, they might interpret it the old way or a
Mhm.
different way, and then you have to constantly rework that interpretation.
yeah.
So is the end statement a vehicle there to direct where this view is, right?
Yes.
Like, should we do the end statement every year?
No, don't do the end statement every year. Ask Susan when you bring her in. That's a really good question for her. I've heard Susan say end statements should not be revised or modified any sooner than 5 years. Or on it as a case needed, kind of thing. So I don't know how old your end statement is. Ours
Well,
is
about a decade.
12 years, yeah, I think
Yeah.
beyond time to look
It'd
at
be
these
time.
statements, quite honestly.
because once you have that end statement in place, that really gives you, the board, the direction, right? You know where to go now, and it also informs your strategic plan for the district. So if there's a little incongruity happening right now, then it might be, I've been thinking about redoing the end statement and asking our community to come back together and talk about this.
And some of you haven't mentioned, I feel is appropriate, it's executive limitations.
Yeah.
Feel like more tactical, and it's like, one of the things that people respect about the US Constitution is that it's short. And then you look at like the Constitution of Brazil, it's like 2,000, or it's like 200 pages, and then you look at the Constitution of Chile, and it's like 2,000 pages. And like, so like, N should be short.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, and the ends should be short, and they are, they tend to be short, and your executive limit, look at your policy, I mean, this is ours, I brought, it's our policies. Most boards will have a 3-ring binder full of policies. So I mean, this is brief, I love that, that's another thing I like about policy governance is the brevity of it all.
Is it typical or atypical for boards to bring in consultants to kind of facilitate a process to define or?
We did, when we did it back in 2018. Or no, we revised our ends right before the pandemic, actually. And I remember we brought in Susan actually to facilitate that, yeah.
And you'll remember that we just signed a contract with VSBA to do that.
To do our policy review this summer, right? Okay.
I think, well, let's talk about that after, because that I think is not these, we can't
Yeah.
do these are something different. We're gonna help you with your
Oh, that's a
mandated
good clarification.
policies. Yeah, yeah,
Right.
the mandated ones, the ones that you have to have on your
Right.
books.
Yes, and I think
Yes, and.
if the board wants to review the ends policies, which I think they should.
Yeah.
It should happen before we do strategic planning.
Yes,
Like-
for
like-
sure, because that sets the whole context, the picture frame.
Recoupment, is that the word you were looking for?
Remediation.
Recouping, yes, recouping,
That's what
recouping,
Gemini
I
says.
think that's what it was.
I mean, that was the.
Oh, it could be recovery,
specific,
yes,
The
academic.
measurement specific is a positive growth, like there's. I think
Recovery,
there's a-
that's what it was recovery, yeah, yeah.
AI, can't trust AI.
See, there's limits to that. So here's an important point ahead to kind of summarize what we've just been talking about board responsibility. What do you think of that? Short and sweet. I think you even,
Outcomes are, I would add another phrase in there.
yeah, let's hear it.
And that outcomes are as expected. Or something that suggests the outcome component.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Well run is great, students
Yeah.
aren't doing well, not so much, right? Like
The
then
building
what is
looks
well
nice.
done,
The heat is good,
Yeah.
the food is good,
right? Everybody's
everybody's
happy,
happy, yeah.
but nobody's doing
Sweet,
anything.
Michelle, I love that, I love that, I gotta think of a new
Yeah.
phrase, a board's responsibility to see that schools are well run and students are
Achieving.
achieving. But we don't run them and we don't teach the students. Were you gonna say something, Seamus?
No, that, I think also a board's responsibility is to represent, which I think maybe you're gonna differ from me on, which is interesting. But we should represent, like, we have to connect what the community wants in terms of outcomes. We have to make sure that what the community wants in terms of outcomes
Yeah,
are the outcomes that we're getting.
I
Like,
agree
it's
with that.
mostly what you're saying.
I agree with that. You'll get, the word represent, how we use it is what I would be careful about, but we'll get to that. All right, so I like this. It kind of just helps me as a board member, just remember that, you know, we are kind of responsible. We are responsible for assuring that schools are well run and our students are learning, but we're not actually doing that hard day-to-day work. So we luckily can delegate that, and we'll talk about that, what that looks like. Don't you, let's see, we have till 1, right? And tell me, are we building in any time for another break, or should I just give a break as needed?
I don't think so, whatever you guys.
I think anybody who thinks that we're coming up, if we all have glassy eyes and you think it's a good time for a break, please suggest that, and then we'll.
Why don't we, I'm gonna hand out an exercise. This is kind of, I call this the
Can I
BS.
ask a question about your characteristics?
Sure.
What you like? I love, are they designed to work with policy governance?
No, they're not, but, and why do you ask?
Well, reading over one of them, and
Yeah.
I agree with it, and but it wasn't this way in the too distant past, we'll say. The one where effective school boards have collaborative relationship with some community, and then some of the things you highlighted, just you highlighted them.
Yeah.
Strong communication between superintendent, staff, and each other.
Yep.
Received information from many sources, including the superintendent.
Yep.
Directors, principals, teachers, and sources outside the district. Superintendent was a primary source, but not the only. And then something that wasn't highlighted. In low achieving districts, board members expressed concern that not all information was shared or shared equally. You know, and I think this is great,
Yeah,
but
in policy governance, you think it's different?
no, I'm saying, I'm
Oh.
asking, I mean, I think this can work with policy governance,
Yep.
but is it designed to work with policy governance?
That paper? You mean that,
Can it be, I guess, that's,
say again,
can it be?
can it be? Oh, yeah, for
I
sure.
think the thing is like, if it's kind of like, you know, can we imagine a system of government that still produces life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness? And it's like, okay, the Dutch still have a king or a queen. And so it's like, yes, there are other ways to get there. And I think when you look at this, it's like, the reason that policy governance has taken over many boards is because it seems to be one of the ways to accomplish those things. So that's kind of saying what needs to happen, and policy governance is just a way to get there. So it's compatible. And it's hard to imagine alternatives to policy governance. Policy governance is also kind of a cult.
No, I'm not asking for an alternative, I'm just saying. What happened? In the
Bad policy governance.
bad policy governance does not follow this.
Absolutely, I agree with you.
And I'm wondering, are you asking, is there a conflict between that principle and policy?
That's what I
governance?
thought you were
And I
asking too.
think there's a conflict between that principle and the prior implementation of policy governance. Not actual
Yeah.
policy.
The way
governance,
a
right?
prior application here,
Yeah,
okay,
I mean, because there was
Yeah.
another one where, you know, effective boards embrace and monitor data. Even when the information is negative, and use it for improvement. But you have to have that information.
absolutely.
If you go, so that was number 5, but I just read number 4
Mhm.
was the one that I read previously. So if you're not getting
Mhm.
the information because number
Yeah.
4 is not being adhered to,
Right,
you can't effectively
monitor,
monitor and then improve
I
with your
agree.
negative stuff.
I agree,
You can't have all of your information curated from a single source.
no.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, that paper, I don't think anybody, those two people that wrote that paper, Chuck and I can't remember the other word, I don't think they were policy governance people at all. I think they were thinking about governance. They weren't thinking about, they were doing research in school districts, and I don't know, maybe some of those school districts were following policy governance.
Research on just what the characteristics of
Yeah,
effective boards.
generally speaking, yeah, and as Seamus so well said, policy governance is a way to help us achieve those 8 effective characteristics. So what I put in front of you is just what I call the BS activity. See if you can, I know, I love it.
I like it.
You can identify these roles, these tasks as a board role, a superintendent role, or maybe both. That's where the BS comes in. I'm gonna use the rest of what you're doing that, and then we'll just. my chat about these? Are any that are harder than others? Some of them are so easy, no, they probably insult your intelligence, but yeah, no. I'll tell you which ones I think are easy, Dan, if we get to them. No, seriously, are there any that you were like, I don't know about this one? I don't know if I have time to go through all of them, but. Questions, and I gave away my last copy, so might look over your shoulder.
14 for me depends,
Hmm,
at what level is the
Mm.
question, right? Like, there's certainly,
review the audit and.
right, there's certainly instances where I think we might want to review an audit, but then there's a lot, depending on what the audit is, right? There's always where Joe and his team will.
Right. Yeah, I think this was meant to be a financial audit.
As opposed to like a facilities audit, right? Which
Yeah,
would be for Joe-
exactly.
Which would be for Joe and his team.
Yeah, since it does say, well, it doesn't even
It
specify.
doesn't designate the genre or the
Yeah,
size.
so let's just say it's a financial audit from an outside accounting firm or an audit firm. So does that make it clear?
Yes.
Yeah.
For me,
Yeah.
doesn't mean I got it right though.
No, it doesn't.
6 is a little unclear for me too, because it doesn't specify.
I also. have that.
Governance or operational
Yeah,
policies, it
it-
just means policies.
It's at what level,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
It's
It's a level
their
thing.
policies that set direction for the school.
Yeah, I did both. It
administration.
depends on the level.
Right.
Mhm. Yeah, you're gonna have your policies, your board policies. I would definitely say the creation of these policies, your policy governance policies is a board role. You don't want. But I know that there are internal policies, or I don't know, maybe the district doesn't call them policies. Do you call them admin memos or procedures?
We have board policies that go beyond the policy governance policy.
Oh, you also have board policies, okay, well, like outside the mandated policies even,
I haven't been here long enough to tell you that,
Okay.
to be honest.
So like, for example, public participation, it's not a mandated policy,
right?
but
Oh,
it is
you-
a board policy. We adopted VSBA 821.
As a board policy, so it's not in here,
So it is
not
not,
policy manual,
it is not in the policy governance or policies under governance.
okay,
It's a
separate
separate one,
to help you with that work, yeah.
which is confusing. And it was actually when in the previous superintendent, we asked for her advice about where to put it. And we ended up going with not putting it into executive limitations or something like
Well,
that.
shouldn't, I don't think it needs to go in executive limit, this is definitely part of your governance process. And I'm wondering,
When I say policy, I'm talking about, we
Yeah.
have policies for substitute teachers, for travel
Right.
reimbursement, for professional development. Those are all board adopted policies. And then there are administrative procedures for some of those.
right, yep,
That would be a good thing when we do the
Yes.
VSBA policy audit, because right now what we have is we have something on the website and it says. Board policies and procedures, and then there's this table. And it kind of lists, and so like on there, we have like what you're talking about, and then we
Yep.
also have the board public participation policy, but we don't have. Any of the policy governance stuff, and so it would be.
Right, that's on a separate page.
Right, and so any amount of clarifying that we could write down and everybody agree that it's true on the website, even if it's redundant.
yeah.
We should probably have that.
I agree. But I would also say some of your board policies, like that public comment policy. It's fine that you have a separate policy for it as a board. But you could also build it into your governance process, your governing style.
Yeah, I mean, I think we'd probably be open
To
that.
kind of
if we-
streamline it and not make it so darn confusing, because
It is confusing.
It
I mean,
is.
even right now, I'm looking at our website and we have. You know, there's the ends policy, there's policies and procedures, and then there's policy governance. And it's like, you've got like, what's
Yeah.
what fits
Well,
where.
And that's, and so I think that this board seems like we'd be amenable to clarifying that.
Yes.
And also I wanna recognize that like having something that's simple is hard. So like what we're talking about is hard.
well,
It's just
said.
We can
now.
get there.
But you could
Amen.
even do, like, I would envision, like, you could have a map and say. You know, like to show everything, and then this is what fits where. So this is policy governance. These are the board policies, like what's separate. Where do the ends policies fit through all of
And it
that?
should be like understandable to an eighth grader.
Very visual. It could be understandable to a kindergartner.
Well, that's maybe a little bit more, like a
I mean,
neighbor.
a visual, you could say like, these are the rules, this is how it all fits, and this is what we do. This is where the ends fit into it, I mean, I'm all for that, like, keep it simple.
Which is hard to do.
Which is
because you
hard,
said-
simple as. the
Yeah,
hardest thing.
simple is hard.
But it goes
Same-
a long way in terms of durability over boards and superintendents,
sure
right?
it
Like if
does.
the goal is to not experience what you experienced as a
Exactly.
community, then this was help.
100%.
Yeah, yeah.
But I think that is a really good work effort for us in 2026. As we're looking at a strategic plan, as we're looking at revisiting our ends, as we're looking at mapping all of this out, perhaps enhancing our website, like all of these things, I'm like, I hope that these are work plan items we can tackle in 26.
You've got, that's ambitious, like everything you just said, that's huge, Jen. But, you know, it's a
Break
broad
it down
conversation.
and work it through.
Element
Yeah.
one bite at a time, but
Yeah.
knowing and having a work plan and saying, at
Yeah.
least this is what we have to
Do you
do.
have an annual work plan?
Do I know how to do a work?
No,
plan?
do you have one, an annual work plan as a
We
board?
have started, we've got the foundation of one with all the different pieces to it. But it's just a matter of then like going back and
Yeah.
resurrecting that, and putting our race together.
Certainly, my experience at my company is that just because you have a plan doesn't mean you'll not even fall, I'm not even saying that plans fall apart when they meet reality, I'm saying that like. Even having an actively managed project is no walk in the park.
No,
And
I
so,
know.
Yeah,
But it's the stewardship, it's having it and bringing it up during every board meeting and having your
I mean,
hands.
it's a time investment, right? It's
Absolutely.
frankly, it means, in my opinion, more special board meetings that are just for work sessions to do that kind of stuff. Because of the, you know, if the goal is we have to be done at 8 o'clock on our board meeting, we just can't get everything done that we need done.
and I would say that getting done at 8 o'clock is not. The
I know.
consensus of the board,
I
that
know.
that's what we need to do,
Yeah.
but, yeah.
yeah. I would suggest, I'll send you examples of annual work plans from the policy governance. I'll send you our example. The investment in time is the first one. And then after that, they kind of write themselves. And also they don't just live on the shelf. This is what creates our agenda every month. So talk about agenda planning becoming easy. If you have that annual work plan and it's organized by policy, so we have the community, you know, linkage and executive limitation, reporting schedule, governance process, reporting schedule. And then we know what month we're gonna do which policy, which month, you know, it's all mapped out. That first lift is hard because you gotta get it on there. But then after that, during our summer retreat, we'll take an hour and look at the work plan and just kind of update it. Yeah,
Just to add some spice into this conversation, I don't necessarily believe that it will be that it, like, I know that you're not saying that it does the work. And so a human doesn't have to work, a human still like, and I think also that if you set a plan at the beginning of the year and things come up,
yeah,
you know, so I'm highly skeptical of. Anyway, the board has to focus on as few things as possible that are
Yes.
that are important. And so like a work plan should be just like a constitution. I think for a board, a volunteer should be as small as possible. It should focus on the things that really matter. And then we feel success because we're actually doing, like last year, we passed the first policy in 5 years, which was public participation. We passed the first change to executive limitations in probably 5 or 10 years. And like, so we should build on success.
absolutely.
But in the same way that simplicity is hard, also project planning is hard. And so I only mean to say that like if and when we accomplish work planning and project management, I will be very impressed and thankful to the person who is driving that. But there has to be a person driving it. And I do think we have that expertise on the board, actually.
Yeah, you do.
I'm looking at you, John.
Oh, wait, before I go on, any other ones that kind of cause headache or heartburn?
Not a headache, but I like number 13, determining grade configuration for a school. I think to me, that is also one that is contextual, right? If it's, and I'm just using our example specifically, if our goal is to move 5th graders to the middle school,
Right,
I think that's probably more a superintendent deal. If it involves closing a building, which will then impact how we do grade configurations, I think that's a different.
I
Can I
agree.
bring up now I feel like that's a perfect So when I had brought up before this concept that if it's politically controversial, the board should provide the
Mhm.
guidance. Both so that it has the legitimacy and also so that you have some political cover to do hard and
Yes.
unpleasant things. And you brought up the example of like some of the most controversial things in your experience are like a band director or a coach. And I think that like, if a board is listening outside of the parent community, the parent community in South Burlington is only 20% of the voters.
That's
If
pretty
we-
big. For some communities, that's big.
Right, so I think if we are, as a board, listening to the broader community and not just the parents. The broader community doesn't care about a band director. And so it's our job as a board to stay focused on things that, it's in our code of conduct, it says we have
Right.
to.
Maybe, but I had a text from a gentleman last night complaining about the change to Rebels. He's
Still.
70 years old. So he said the change away
What,
from
5 years
Rebels from.
10 years ago?
No, it was.
So all I'm saying is that like,
Yeah.
as a board, I would feel like a quality board.
No, I know we changed, but.
Effectively.
A quality board will recognize that like a change to a band director, a change to a coach.
Wow.
Is not our territory. Firing principal is not our territory. However, on the other hand, school consolidation, even though it does involve operations, but it's gonna, like, if you move, like, and this is something this district may have to deal with in the next couple of years. If you have to move grade levels from Chamberlain to Rick Marcotte or vice versa, that is gonna be a huge mess and in a good way. I'm not saying in a bad way.
All right.
And that the board has to decide that, and even if that's what you want, it's like, we can't have you be the, like, that's a huge political legitimacy problem, if you make that decision. And if it's seen that you are making that decision, as opposed to us making that decision. So I personally feel that that's very important to the proper functioning of democracy.
I agree with everything you're saying. And would add that like a long-lived coach or teacher has more constituents than just the current parents, and they become stalwarts, you know what I mean? And those do become controversial where people go to the board, save this person, so.
She was my
Hopefully we'll
favorite
never-
fifth grade
Yeah, we'll
teacher
never come to
30
that
years ago,
result.
yeah.
I think Those are the places where I see superintendents get burned, is that they have every bit of evidence they need to remove somebody, but they are beloved. And so the superintendent will make a recommendation, we need to non-renew this contract, and the board will turn it down, and then the superintendent ends up leaving, and somebody who was, abusive.
So we just watched a movie last night with my kids, Miracle on 34th Street.
Oh, yeah.
And the concept of the movie is that Santa Claus is put on trial. And the judge is put in the position of having to say whether Santa Claus is real or not. And his political consultants are like, do not decide that because you will never be elected again. And so in a way, even though it's backwards, the superintendent is the judge. Like, if it's about Santa Claus, you should not decide, because that will, it will delegitimate the whole thing. So it's like the Santa Claus rule. I feel like that's my personal thing.
One that I was a little on the fence about was conduct site visits to schools. I originally put superintendent, but because I feel like since I've been on this board, there's been a lot of separation of board and schools.
Yeah.
But I don't feel that that's really right necessarily. I think board members should be able to go into schools and see what's going on there and meet people and kids. And so that one,
What did you put down, BS?
yeah.
Yeah, what do others think about that? That puzzle.
Well, I thought, superintendent's gonna be going around to the schools,
Yeah.
any good
Hopefully.
superintendent
Mhm.
is gonna be going around to the schools, pretty consistently, so.
Yeah,
Like,
but the point that Emily is making is she feels like it's also part of the responsibility of the role of the board to go to see schools.
I think so.
So in policy of governance, there's 3 types of monitoring, remember? The policy monitoring,
Oh, internal, external, and direct inspection.
The internal, yep, so, monitoring by an external party, so like a financial audit, and the third one is
Direct
direct
inspection.
inspection. So you could say that part of your monitoring role is direct inspection. What does that look like? I'm going to the holiday music concert on Thursday at our school because I haven't been inside our school except to go to a board meeting forever, you know? So I want to go see like, how's our music program doing? If I want more than that, and if the board decides I need to see more of what's happening in the school, you need to talk about that with Joe, the superintendent, to decide what would be effective and efficient and appropriate, right? And I
Let's
think
draw
that's
that out a
key.
little bit, like,
Yeah.
Joe, I would love to hear
Yeah.
how,
thank you.
like, what is your, do you have any stories about boards?
I do, and I agree that the board should be able to go in, but I think it needs to be managed and there needs to be reason and it needs to be communicated. Even as a parent, you're a parent, so when you're a board member, you are whether you like it or not, you're seen different by the staff.
You are.
And when you come in, people will automatically think that they're under inspection and that causes anxiety.
Sure does.
So you need to be just aware of that going into your own kid's building. But I think, you know, if it's a public event, football game, choir concert, and you board members can go there and I think it's very well appreciated. It's not appreciated if board members show up and say, hey, I just want to walk through. It is better received when I say, hey, we have some new board members who really want to learn more about what we're doing. We would love for you to show off your building. Can we come around as a group or even an individual? Emily's going to come around.
Yeah.
Give them the heads up, know what it's about to try to decrease that anxiety level. You know what I mean?
And Emily, I feel like you weren't saying that you wanted to be able to do unannounced inspections. I feel like that's not where you were coming from. But on the other hand, I think we just lived through an experience where maybe we felt like we didn't have as much information as we needed. So could you talk a little bit about more like why you think it's important or what you meant when you said like access?
I think, I really appreciate Joe, you saying that, because it does not even occur to me that I would be seen as someone who might be inspecting or like trying to catch someone doing something.
Investigating, if you call Dan, the former
Yeah.
investigator, say, let's go investigate
That,
that school.
in fact, I have a teacher friend who was talking to me and said something like, oh, well, just so you know, this is why, like, describing why they were doing something, like, I had some sort of concern about I was like, I have zero experience in education. I definitely feel like the professionals are doing the job that they should be doing, and like, they have all the responsibility and education, anything. So yes, what I meant was, for me, I joined the school board because I love South Burlington and I do love the schools. I am a parent, 4 kids, and the schools are the best. That's what I want to be able to go in there and just feel the energy and see how the kids are doing, how the teachers are feeling. I mean, what do their faces look like? Is there a way we can help make this better for everybody? That's mostly, it's all about supporting schools. That's why I'd like to go and be able to see that, but
Like a demonstration of care, right?
yeah,
You
exactly.
want people to feel seen by the district.
And that we want to work together to try to, to care, to bring us to a place that
Would that be acceptable for you, Joe?
I like the idea of being
This is
called out.
okay.
I still want that communication to be,
Yeah,
Mhm.
that's absolutely the message that needs to
Yeah.
be put out there, that this is why this, but.
Exactly.
And I think there's,
If you're a parent, you should have whatever parental rights you have, even as a board member, but if it's
Absolutely.
anything beyond that, I would not want. Joe Public coming in to say,
Right.
I want to see the smiling faces.
Mhm.
This is why this person's coming in, because they are very supportive, they want to learn some, you know, and that I think is just to ease that anxiety level.
Right,
and one of the first things you said today was superintendents don't leave districts, they leave boards. But I think that also what that means is that the boards can help the superintendent be more effective. And when there's people on the board who have special abilities, and so like, you know, boards will turn over, so it's important to have consistent and simple ends and executive limitations, so there can be continuity there. However, it's like, we should consider taking advantage of individual strengths on a particular set of school board members. And so like, for example, like on this school board, it's like, well, Jen has a long background in organizing work. And Emily has like a strong energy for like connecting, whatever she can do to help the schools feel more. And so it's like, there can be active management, I feel like, of school board members where, you've heard this message from Emily that she wants to be helpful. And so it's like, it's a little bit, it's not just like, can Emily ask you, it's also, can you ask Emily, to go and say, hey, it's a quarter, every quarter, I don't know.
Yeah.
So I use us as resources because there won't always be an Emily on the board, right? Right.
And I think also, to me, I know I don't have control over what goes on in the school, but there's so much confusion about what school boards can do, so.
Right.
That's another reason why I wouldn't understand that I would be intimidating.
Right.
Because
I wanted to ask the students, what would you think if you saw a school board member, if you weren't on the school board, you're the average student, and you saw a school board member walk into the school? What would you think anything?
I don't
The
think I
student-
know, yeah.
You would know who they are.
No, not the school?
Oh, I think that's the problem. I think that's why I would like the idea of you guys walking around. I think it's different from the teacher's perspective. But I think students don't know who you are. And then if there is a problem and they want to come speak at a school board meeting, they feel intimidated to do so. Because it's like, they've never been in this space. They've never seen your faces before. Like, there's none of that like trust to come speak about something vulnerable. You know what I mean?
Totally.
Yeah.
Like the idea of like coming to a board meeting, it sounds like very professional and you know.
Scary.
So.
Okay.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, I just went the other day, actually, this past Monday, one of the scout requirements for a rank is you have to do citizenship in the community. And they had to talk with an elected official, and they asked me if I would come and speak with them, and so I talked to them about the school board, there were like 15 kids. And it was awesome because they didn't know anything about, like, what is a school board? What is the role? So we went through, we kind of drew a chart of, here's the school board and here's the superintendent and what I learned from policy governance, right? And
Yep.
here's all your principals and then here's all your teachers. So understanding what that, kind of org chart is.
Good for you.
And
Yeah.
then the whole idea of policies, and I still struggle with like, okay, which ones are which? But I remembered the hourglass.
No, we're gonna get to that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I think that is so helpful, because it's
Yeah.
like, this is where the board is, these
Yep.
are the policies, and then the superintendent is that point for the operations. And
Absolutely.
explaining that, and then we went through some examples
Yep.
of, things that might have happened that may have been a board decision or a superintendent decision. And it was really interesting. I mean, they had some great questions, but to your point, like, they didn't know who the school, and I think also because there's so much turnover on the board also, like, it's hard to know who's who.
So this is something I was hoping to get budget for, maybe next year. It's like FBI raid jacket.
That's not even,
No, look.
what is it?
And then up and the.
Oh, speaking for it.
Board.
Hilarious. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think that might also help with something I feel like the students on the school board have to work on hard every year is misinformation about the budget. And a lot of that stems from misinformation about who's making the decisions around the budget. And that's kind of the not understanding the structure of like, is the superintendent making those decisions? Are the principals? Is the board? So I
Or
think
the-
that would also be
All
helpful.
the voters.
Or, yeah.
Can I say one thing too on that? Shout out for you guys, your Instagram is awesome. They've got it going and you started it and it's really cool. I mean, I see that you've got updates and you've been doing a really good job. So good job.
Good job.
Props. Everybody
Yay.
follow them on Instagram. It's like,
SBSB.
Student reps.
Yeah.
Student reps.
Thank you.
yeah, look them up on Instagram.
All right.
So
Well,
just,
because the school circulated, shared something. That's how I knew.
That's
Yeah,
amazing.
Follow.
I think just,
don't want to sound defensive, but I think that I think it is important that, you know, students know who the school board members are and all that. I need school board members who, when people do come to them and say, hey, I have a complaint, this teacher's doing this, or that the response from the school board member is appropriate to that
Yes.
person about.
Yeah, we talked
This
about
is
that.
who you should talk to about. I'm very empathetic to your issue, please.
Yeah.
Reach out to the principal.
That's
superintendent,
when you said,
whatever.
yeah, so, yeah,
Students wants to school.
Yes,
yeah,
like I don't think a student would know to go to you.
Yeah.
Versus to go towards
yeah,
the school board. So having that understanding.
yeah, that could be part of
Typical
your,
first
Ally.
student would typically go to a principal for
Yeah.
that would help, but if the
Yes.
problem
Yeah.
with the principal, then it comes to the. super-
And that, for you guys, could be a part that you play as a student rep, is to educate the student population about how you get an issue heard in the district. That would be huge. It's the same, we're gonna go over that. It's the same way that any member of the community would approach it, right? Cause it's really important. What Joe said is that that he is not circumvented. So just to sum up this whole kind of roles and responsibilities, I would say it's more of an art than a science, right? Because there are so many gray areas and areas where it does overlap, and so many cases, like Austin pointed out, it just depends on the situation, right? So it's hard to say this is a right answer or a wrong answer. If you kind of remember what your ultimate responsibility is, the governance role is really to focus. And think of that governance versus management, that can help you avoid stepping into some of these pitfalls. And the other thing I would add to that is communication and trust with your superintendent, and having that dialogue like you're having right now with them is also critical. And so once you have you know, those elements in place and you can have a productive conversation, then you're going to avoid these disagreements, or when you have one, you're going to be able to resolve it more easily than if you have that foundation of trust and respect. So what I'm hearing here is very positive, very it portends for a wonderful future for you guys.
So did we go, I heard you ask about one, and I've been taking notes and things. I don't know if I missed something else. Are there others where we had the BS? Can we go through, like,
She chuckles.
which ones did we all say were BS? Board superintendent is what that means for people online. I mean, I had, for myself, I had put down,
It's-
developing the vision, I said was the board. Conducting the performance review of the principal, I said was the superintendent. I don't know what you guys have.
Is there one on here, superintendent, goals? Yep,
Yeah.
8.
Number 8, setting
Board.
goals, that was the board.
Mm.
Oh, setting goals for the, sorry, that would be the superintendent.
Yeah, BS.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, yeah, right.
Mutually agreed upon goals.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
for sure.
Mhm.
Well, but let's clarify that. Okay, that's actually very, very, so there are two kinds of things. There's like personal goals. And so in the past, this board has had contracts with superintendents where the superintendent is allowed to set personal goals for themselves with advice from the board, and then those personal goals can be about professional development, they could be about, and so like there's goals for the superintendent can be something that is board and superintendent, it has nothing to do with policy governance, it has nothing to do with like how the superintendent is evaluated from like a policy monitoring point of view. And then the concept of like, so as long as what this means, set goals for the superintendent is like that personal goals thing, I agree it's BS. Board and superintendent. But then like setting goals for the superintendent, like in a policy governance, like if you look at the FAQ of the policy governance website, it says, why don't we talk about goals in policy governance? And I think it's because goals don't always include the why, and so that's why instead of goals, we have ends. And so like in terms of setting ends, that is board. And so the whole, it's almost like a trick question, like goals in a policy governance context is like very different thing.
You have to be clear what goals you're talking about, for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah, as I went through the policy governance training, I thought I think of what I'm saying is similar to what you're thinking, is that I don't know why there would need to be separate superintendent goals. To me, the ends are the ends that I strive for. And if we have a strategic plan with goals, like academic goals, that would come up in our monitoring reports.
I can tell you why there would be superintendent goals, it's to give you a bonus. That's why you have superintendent goals.
Goal.
That's a good idea.
I mean, in the context of our contracts
Right.
directly with the district.
Yeah.
Superintendent goals are a way of having executive compensation.
Okay.
Okay.
Historic,
Interesting.
do you know how many?
I don't know.
That goes? Okay.
I'm just saying
I'm
that
not sure
that's,
if that's a practice that's been happening
Yeah, I don't
for
think we
many
should-
years. Yeah.
I'm just saying that that's. You're saying like, well, it doesn't make sense to me that as a superintendent, I would have to meet both the ends and also some separate set of goals, and I totally agree with you, and the only, in my personal opinion, the only way that I would support a separate set of goals for you is if they were personal goals about, you taking an online certification or something.
Professional development
Right,
goals,
professional
got it,
development.
okay, yeah. Normally in a policy governance world, you don't have separate goals for a superintendent, the CEO, because you are being held accountable for implementing the goal, the ends
Right,
policy. And in that ends policy, you have your strategic plan,
Yeah.
which has goals, you have the continuous improvement plan,
Right.
goals.
What I've read often was, what they
Yeah.
really stressed in there is that the monitoring reports are your evaluation.
That's true,
Right.
true,
Can
yeah.
you say what you just said again? In policy governance, you should not have separate.
I didn't say you shouldn't, I said boards typically don't have goals for their superintendent. However, I do know superintendents that do like to have some goals. Maybe I didn't understand for the bonus reasoning, which is a good one. But also for, I know that my superintendent in her policy governance like to have her own goals because she wanted to keep improving as a professional.
Yeah,
So
that's-
she had areas that she wanted to work on.
Professional goals.
So like,
Professional
when,
goals.
at the
Yeah.
beginning of the meeting, when you said that you felt your board was slipping and I asked what you meant by slipping.
Yeah.
I think an example of policy governance slipping.
Yeah.
Is when the board, instead of changing the ends policy, which is tough.
Yeah,
They're like, well, let's just set some goals for the year. And that's where you've gone off the rails,
okay,
in my opinion.
yeah,
So our policy actually says the board will view superintendent performance as identical to organizational performance, so that organizational accomplishment of board stated ends and avoidance of board proscribed means will be viewed as successful superintendent
That's right.
performance.
that's right. That's how you do your superintendent evaluation.
And the contract, superintendent contract would. To a greater or lesser extent, incorporate that definition of performance. But in the current, our contract with you. We don't have a performance section outside of policy governance, so like,
Right.
if you succeed in policy governance, you're good to go.
Okay. Can we move on? Because we're running a little short on time and this is so good, so interesting. And we could say so much more and spend a couple minutes on each of those, but unfortunately, we just don't have the time. So let's talk about the role of the school board a little bit more concretely, so we know why we do it. Let's talk about what we do, because we have this governance responsibility. So how do we do that? What does that look like in a practical sense? So, the school board acts as trustees, and I underline that word, and I'll come back to that, on behalf of the community or the owners to provide oversight of public education and assuring that three things happen. That we set the vision, expectations, or goals to assure that every student in our district is successful and has access to a high quality public education. We make sure that the taxpayer is getting a good return on their investment. And to enable the system to operate efficiently, effectively, and ethically. So those are kind of the three things that word assuring showed up again. Remember, we talked about how we assure the schools are well run, but we don't actually run them. So we assure that we work hard in our governance role to assure that these three things happen. The reason I underline the word trustees is, this is where I want to talk about that word representative. I hear what you're saying when you talk about what you mean with a representative, and I think that's absolutely correct, what you're saying. I think what makes me nervous is when we think of the term representative, in government, especially like in the legislature, right, whether it's Montpelier or Washington, we really are thinking about a voice for a particular constituency or group. And representatives often advocate on behalf of that constituency or group, for the interests or the concerns of that group. And typically representatives are not entrusted with fiduciary responsibilities. A trustee is different, and that's what I think a school board member is more similar to, is a trustee. And a trustee is somebody who is entrusted by the community, by the voters, to stand in their place. And to be here because they don't want to be here, right? Not every single member of our community wants to be helping assure that our schools are run efficiently and effectively, and ethically. So they ask us to do that work, and they vote us onto the board. They put us in our offices for sure by electing us. They are a very important, I'd say, group of stakeholders. And I think that we as trustees are entrusted to do what's best for the district, the South Burlington School District. That's what our job is we need to assure that they think that everything here is going the way we envisioned it to go. Sometimes those two things can conflict. Sometimes you might have, like, think about budgets, right? The property taxes are too high. The board's got to do something. Let's cut, lower your budget, lower the budget so that our property taxes aren't so high. Well, is that in the best interest of our district? It may not hurt it, may not harm it, but it may. Like, there's sometimes this rub, I think, oftentimes there's a rub between what they want and what we think is best for our students and for this district. And so I'm in a 2-town school district, and I live in one town, but I have another town, right, in my district. And I don't sit there and I think of myself as a representative of just my town. I say I have this, I occupy the Chittenden seat, but I don't say I represent Chittenden, because then it makes Mendon, the other town, feel like I'm not representing them. And I'm not really representing them. I'm actually there helping the district to do what it needs to get done. And part of that, as you said before, Seamus, is that connection. I can't remember how you said it, but you're the bridge. I think you might use the word, the bridge between the community and the school district. Totally. Yes, yes, yes. So when you say represent, I think that's what you were talking, that's what I heard you say. And I was like, yeah, he gets it. Like, you are the bridge between the community and the district. And that's so.
Oh, you got me all riled up here. Somebody else should go first.
I just want to ask a clarifying question about the word trustees.
Yeah.
What's the source of that? Is that in the law? Is that in policy governance? Is that?
No,
in
that's
our
not policy
policies?
governance.
Because that's an interpretation, I think, then, if it's not a source.
It's not in statute.
Right.
We're directors in statute,
What's that?
directors, because I think that's what is in
Exactly.
statute. Yeah.
So you putting trustees there is your interpretation.
And
Or
not mine
somebody,
personally.
not.
Yeah, no,
right.
no.
The
No.
school- The Vermont School Board.
I think it's a
Association.
VSBA interpretation.
Yeah.
I think this seems to be what I've heard from VSBA.
Well, it's also around the country. I would say that this is often the term I see to describe school board members in other states as well. That we are entrusted to serve on the behalf of those that elect us. Trustees are often appointed or elected to oversee the overall direction of an organization. In this case, it's our school district.
Oh, okay.
And,
Can I start the bidding, or does anybody else want to go?
well, and how much time do we want to spend on this? Because,
Good point.
okay.
Till 1 o'clock.
To 1 o'clock. No, I don't want to do that.
I
because
think this is really important, though.
It's,
Very first slide said be quiet.
I know, I'm working, go against your natural instinct. I'm trying. To not say anything. But I mean, I'm trying to be the first person to speak, so if anybody else wants to speak, please speak.
Well, I think that I heard the word trustee in the policy governance training that I took. They did
Okay.
talk about the board members as
It's a trustee, okay.
Yeah. Specifically that, it's not necessarily, school board members are not only representatives of the people that elect them because the work they do impacts people that do not have those kind of decisions, maybe
Exactly.
students. Yep.
That's right. That's right. And that's why I feel more comfortable with the word trustees and representative.
So here's the thing, if you truly wanted to design a system that took into account, first and foremost, the interest of students, you could have an appointed board. However, in the United States, we fund our schools through property taxes, and if we didn't have school boards, it would be taxation without representation. So there is a fundamental, like, the Boston Tea Party, if you're gonna tax property owners in order to pay for schools, you need to give the property owners a voice in how that money is used. And so I think that is the most fundamental, and if you look at the statutes, the one word that they use is shall have, it's legislative. And so I think for me, I don't disagree with what is on the screen here. I just want to insert that, we are representatives of the people that vote for us. And now in our case, there's no conflict there because everybody in the community votes for us. So we represent everybody in the community.
Well, not
Right.
everybody in the community votes for us, not
Right.
non-registered voters,
And we're not their representatives. Like by law,
but do they pay taxes?
I mean, I would say that we're probably representing both the taxpayers and the voters. My neighbor is actually not a voter, but he is a taxpayer. But
So who's,
Anyway.
yeah, okay,
I'm just saying
Yeah.
that we should embrace the idea of advocacy for the community as a whole.
Yeah.
yeah,
And that is, and the
Agreed.
most, I've now been
100%.
through 3 superintendent search processes, and it's very disappointing when I get on an interview with the superintendent. And the only word that they mention is our families, our families, our families. I'm like, dude, that is
80%,
10
yes,
to
yeah.
20% of the people that the school board represents is our families, and everybody else is the people. So
Yeah.
I'll stop there.
Yeah, but the 10 to 20% of the most vocal.
They are the most vocal,
They're
which
the
is
ones
why it's so
you're-
easy to fall into the trap of representing the parents.
Well, and I don't think we're all here representing, we all came onto this board because we felt a strong representation for maybe certain parts of the community, which is great. That way we do get to reach and cover everyone in the community. You might be more focused on certain people. I might be more focused on certain people, and that's how we all come together. to
Yeah,
do
but
that.
I think something, I can't remember if it was mentioned in the training or not, but I've known school board members who have said, well, I represent the very conservative part of our community, or I represent
Right.
the athletics. I disagree with that.
Mhm.
Sometimes you have to put your political beliefs away, your whatever affiliations you have away, because you are representing everybody, including the student.
Well, yeah, and I think what comes into that is that there's obviously a natural inclination in certain ways, or there is a human, what you feel strongly about. But just the other day with the budget, I was the only person who wanted to do a 6% budget
Right.
increase. And so that didn't happen because
Right.
I didn't have the greatest representation on the board, which is totally, that's what we're all here to work together.
Diverse
So
opinions.
I felt like I was glad that I got to say how I felt, and I think some people in the community shared my feelings, but maybe not everyone. And so that's sort of what I mean, and I understood, well,
Right.
that I said my piece, but that's not what everyone majority wanted.
When you said, sometimes you have to put aside your political group, when I came onto the board, there were some board members who would say things like, oh, well, sometimes as a board, we have to take unpopular decisions. And I think that there's a fundamental contradiction between being an elected body and unpopular decisions, which is the problem of democracy, but it's better than any other system we've come up with. It's very problematic when a board takes a quote unquote unpopular decision, because you are literally going against the people, the voting public. And what that does, and what it has done, I would argue, in our district, is eroded public trust and it makes us look like a conspiracy, you know, so. I just want to say that we should embrace being representatives. You should embrace.
Just be clear what you're saying when you say representatives,
Yeah.
because again, go ahead. I know Austin
Please.
wanted to say something earlier.
No,
No.
please.
No, I thought you said I thought I saw you wanting
It
to
was,
chime in.
it would.
It was a
know
couple
that it would
points
get
ago.
us to a good spot.
Okay.
We can see it.
I just be careful when you say who we represent, because I do feel like we are different from those that are elected to represent us in our state house and in our national government. I do think that we are more of a trustee than an actual representative. Our duties are a bit different from those types of representatives. And when of course, we should be listening to those that put us in office. And if we want to, and we should be very solicitous, like we want to get people's input. We want that to happen. I totally get that. What I'm saying is that sometimes there's groups of people that are not in agreement with what we think is what's best for the district. And we have to be okay with that. That's the hard part. That's the unpopular decisions.
I don't know,
that get
I don't know if that's, I'm just saying that I think that there is reasonable people can disagree
Mhm.
on what you just said. In terms of whether it's okay for a school board to say 80% of the community is against X, but we're gonna do it for the good of the kids. I think reasonable people can disagree about whether that's okay. I would say it's not okay, because you'll end up
Okay.
hurting the kids down the line because.
But at the same time, there's also information, you go ahead.
No.
Just that there's information we might have, it's
Exactly.
like the person who needed to be let go, but the community loves them. And you even said, like, we should take that on, and so I think
Let's cover.
you're kind of, you do agree that there are certain situations, but the level of communication and transparency that we are able to offer, I think, is the important piece to try to keep the trust going. And I don't think those happen that often in our role.
Hopefully not.
No, I don't want to get into debate for debate's sake. We need to get through this. I think trustee is just a better term for the role we play. We can wordsmith around like being a representative and what that means, but if we take it too literally and we are just like the extension of the voice of the community, like we absolutely need to consider the community, but that is, part of that is making unpopular decisions that might be better for the community in the long run that no community member wants today, right? Like if we need to think about reserves or how we do budgeting for the future care of like the future community. Current constituents may not want that, but we may need to do it for, you know, as a trustee, because we have a broader mandate to like not just execute the priorities today, which will be, I want a 0% tax increase, right? Every year. That's right. That's always going to be, if we were just strictly representatives, those are the type of like, you know, ad absurdum, like logical, you could take it to, which is. So I would push back on the notion that we are representatives of the community. I think this is a better term, which means we need to incorporate the community's feedback and incorporate their best interests. But trustee implies interpretation and longevity in a way that like representation does. In my opinion.
Can we leave it there? Okay, we agree to disagree a little bit, but it's a good discussion to
I
have.
love this discussion.
I do
This is
too.
This is what really functional school boards do. So I can't tell you how much I appreciate this, because everybody's rational and reasonable without slamming things or walking out or bad, so.
And you're following those session guidelines to a T. I heard the yes and several times and listening with curiosity and not judging. You guys are a very high functioning board in terms of your interpersonal relationships and skills. We could just skip over the communications exercise I had planned, but I still want to do it because it's really fun.
So it's, I mean, you've seen dysfunction here. I've seen it in my career. I'm very, very pleased
too.
with this discussion.
Yeah. I've moved to South Burlington just to serve on this board. I love my board though. So just gonna touch on those. So that's how the VSBA, based on statute and what you read earlier, all the things that we have to do, we've categorized those things into 6 different themes, pillars, and I don't want to go into each of these right now because each of them could take a whole retreat. But you have tons of resources to, if you're feeling a little shaky on, say, monitoring progress, go to our website, and there's the Essential Work of Vermont School Boards Toolkit on the website. Students, you guys should have access to our website. Do you know if you do, like the locked pieces of it? I wonder. It would be good for you. I'm gonna check
Probably
with,
request access.
I'm gonna ask Amy in our office if you have access, because there's a lot of good resources out there. Just look and dig into things that you're feeling weak on, and then let me know if you have any questions, okay? That's all I'm gonna
actually have a
say.
question.
Yep.
And I need to follow up because I reached out to you guys about the National Student
Board Association, yeah.
And I'm just remembering, I don't think I ever followed back with you about that.
Yeah,
Because I had reached out to them, and do you know much about
they
that?
came to our conference.
I
You remember?
that.
Yeah.
They are gonna have a conference.
We're gonna, I don't know what their plans are, but we will have a webinar. In fact, I may be calling you guys to be panelists for it. The VSBA will have a webinar, I think, in April, if I'm not mistaken, on student voice at the board. And we'll probably invite that group to be part of that too. Yeah,
I'm just remembering, I'll follow up with
Okay.
them, because I know I had reached out, because I wanted to provide you guys some information.
They're great.
Want to make sure they're looped. in.
they're connected. Yeah, they're a great organization. They're relatively new, but they are wonderful. And yeah, so thank you. Thank you, John, for bringing that up. All right, let's apply a little bit of what we're learning for like 20 minutes, if we can do some scenarios. This is called oversight, overstep, or not a great idea. So I'm gonna put up some scenarios of board members, and we're just gonna talk about them, think about them. And this is where we could think about those who want to jump in, and you're doing an excellent job at that too, Seamus, like holding back, I've noticed. And then letting other people, I love that, you're definitely following that session.
In ancient Egypt, somebody would have not taken that approach.
I know. No, but you're doing a great job. So, let's, yeah, here's a low hanging fruit one. I'm kind of like, okay, I don't want to say easy one because, all right, at a meeting, the board is discussing the first draft of the fiscal year's budget that the superintendent has just presented. Hey, have you done this yet?
This would be coming up.
It's coming up, this meeting, this month is when ours is Monday night. A board member wants to know how the first draft budget supports the district goals. So that board member says, hey, can you let us know how you think this budget is supporting our goals, our ends policy? Is this something that is part of our board responsibility to oversee? Are we overstepping by asking that
Should we
question,
take a-
or just not asking? It's not a great idea.
Close our eyes and vote for each thing.
No, you don't have to do that. I mean, what is your gut?
Oversight.
I would say
Oversight,
oversight.
that's oversight.
Anybody see it differently? No, totally what you should be doing in a budget presentation is, if it's not clear, if the superintendent's not presenting it that way, then you have every right to say, I don't get it. How is this aligned with our goals or our ends policy? This one is not great for policy governance board because you guys do superintendent evaluations differently, but let's forget about that for a second. So at a meeting, a board member inquires why a superintendent evaluation hasn't been done recently, and the chair agrees it's not been done in over a year, so they will put it on the next meeting agenda to conduct one. What is this, like oversight? Is this part of the overstepping, or not a great idea?
Oversight.
Oversight, yeah.
And in our context, again, which probably is different, we did have a contract that did allow the superintendent to be evaluated separately from policy governance. We don't have that anymore. It may
Okay.
come back in the future,
Okay,
but
good.
we do have such a thing as that. Like we did, like
You're
we're
doing a formal evaluation, or you're not doing a formal
not the
evaluation?
current contract.
Okay.
In past contracts we have.
Joel, what do you think of this?
And you don't have to
I think, yeah,
say, if you don't
No,
wanna talk about.
I think
that.
not a great idea. I think it's knee jerk. I think that there needs to be to say that, let's evaluate them at the next agenda, I think is not a great idea. I think there needs to be.
That's what I would
I think-
expect too.
I think they're putting on the agenda the decision about whether or not to evaluate the next agenda. I think they're deciding, the way I'm reading this is at that meeting, they're saying, should we conduct a superintendent evaluation? Yes, we are electing to do.
If the meaning is, they will put it on the agenda to discuss the next.
Yeah.
I agree. If it's not, if it's, let's put it on the next agenda to conduct an evaluation.
I read it
Let's
as,
do an evaluation in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah, Joe, I thought it was not a great
Don't
idea
know
too,
what
because I was
think
reading it
about
the same way you were
and
reading it.
We don't know what we're gonna say, but let's do it.
Yeah.
I think that's an important thing. Well, we will have a superintendent evaluation.
Not according to the current.
Well, it's an
contract, Joe.
interim, the
Don't-
current
don't- don't we
contract
have to
is
do
is
it?
an interim,
Don't we
yeah.
have to do it for the bonus? Isn't that
For the-
required?
No, that's not in
Bonus
the
in the
contract.
current contract.
Oh, in this one, yes, that's right.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So like, for example, in the past, this
I-
board
I
has
see what
been
you
through a problem
Right.
where. The contract required us to do a superintendent evaluation by May 15th. And we didn't meet that deadline, and so it would have been very good for board members to be like, guys, we need to get this done, it's in our contract. So this is kind of like a special trick question in our district.
Yeah, I know. I know it doesn't apply great to a policy governance board, but I will say this, that there's still some things that do apply to you all, as a PG board, and that is, supervision of the superintendent and, giving feedback on his or her performance shouldn't be a one-off thing. It should be done just once a year. It should be done consistently throughout the
That's what
year.
the monitor.
And that's exactly the beauty of the monitoring reports, is we're actually evaluating it every single meeting by looking at those monitoring reports that he's submitting. So yeah, so in a way, policy governance helps with that. Also, I would say that this scenario doesn't really tell us, but what is in the superintendent's contract?
Right.
Right? Maybe the contract says there doesn't even speak to an evaluation. So they could come back and say, well, hang on, there's nothing in my contract about this, so you guys can't do this. Another thing I would mention is, have you set some goals for your superintendent, some mutually agreed upon goals? Because it sure is hard to evaluate if you don't have some goals for which to measure against. So again, just throwing out oh shoot, we forgot to do superintendent evaluation. We really should do this at the next meeting, or even put it on the agenda at the next meeting. This is where I would go back to an annual work plan. This is a perfect thing where you could plug into your work plan and know, and that's where you look at the superintendent's contract. When did they have to have an evaluation done by, so they have enough time to decide whether they're renewing a contract, and then work yourself backwards, right? So not a great idea. I would say probably a pretty bad idea. But this is kind of more the traditional governance world, and what you guys are doing is policy governance, and just what Dan said. This you're monitoring every single meeting through the policy monitoring reports. So this kind of interesting. This one goes to something somebody was saying about, I think it was you, Seamus, about different members on the board who have different skill sets and experiences that could be very helpful to the superintendent. So this kind of speaks to that a little bit. A board member comes in to meet with the superintendent, and the member wants the district to change the math curriculum. He has heard about a great curriculum from his brother who teaches in another district. And he has a lot of information, blah, 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 blah. They don't even use textbooks anymore. Sorry, Ally and Moman, they don't even use that textbooks, do you?
I do.
Oh, you do? Okay.
Sorry, your size.
I told my son,
Math.
my son's in college, I was like, don't forget I just saw him recently studying in Spain. I said, okay, we're going to this place, but don't forget to bring your textbooks. He's like, what the hell, Mom? I don't have a textbook on my computer. But you guys still use textbooks, okay. So this board member has a lot of information that he wants to share with the board and the superintendent. What do you think about this? Should a board member do this?
Not overstuff.
Stuff.
Or overstep, sorry.
No, I think that like. In a healthy PG board with a healthy relationship with the superintendent. This would be an example of like, adds a little bit of. If a board member, for example, knows a lot about policy monitoring,
Yeah,
then they might make suggestions to the superintendent in the spirit of asking the superintendent how it would be best to bring it up at the board level, so that then we can work on it. So I don't think.
That's different than what this is.
This is different, yes, it's different.
Yeah, the board level is not the place to be discussing something, in my opinion, something like this. There are other avenues, and this. Not, it seems like it's bordering on an abuse of power. It's like, well, I'm here, so I'm going to circumvent how things are normally done. And just go right to the top, whereas a parent who isn't a board member, who might have the same information, can't do that. There are other avenues for this to be done.
I would just say, I agree with you. And I think that it also, there could be information that you may have.
Mhm,
And it could come up during a board meeting potentially.
mhm,
And it could be something, especially if you have like a curriculum advisory committee,
mhm.
that it could be a recommendation to the committee. You know,
Mhm.
but I don't think that, I think this is definitely an overstep that
Mhm.
we want you to change the math curriculum. No way.
Yeah, that's. very
Well, but like, let's say that I knew about this amazing math curriculum. I might go to Joe, and as
Yeah.
long as it wasn't Joe implement this, it was Joe, this is interesting.
Right.
Do you think it's appropriate for me to bring this up at the board level, or what's your advice? Like,
Right.
and then you could be like, dude, that has been. You know, that's bad science. It's
That's
like whole
completely
language
debunked.
as opposed to.
That was used 30 years ago.
Exactly,
Yeah,
that
yeah.
you need, you know, and so I think that using board members should feel that they can talk to the superintendent. About how to present ideas,
Yeah.
because we are not educational experts. So I do think there's a little bit of,
But that's different than what's presented
Yeah,
here.
right.
That is
It
different.
says
That is
you're
different.
gonna change the math curriculum. Your thing is, hey,
Overstep.
what's your advice?
When you think about
Yeah.
that, that's what I think, yeah.
Yeah.
More be
Yeah,
like,
you're
here's
just
the expert, I saw this, is it
This is a
good?
directive.
Yeah.
But I liked how you're bringing that out, that like, you
Yeah.
still should be able
Like how you
to talk.
talk.
and, like,
At the dialogue.
and it only works if we have. If the superintendent trusts us to not
Exactly.
be doing that on a regular, or to be, yeah.
Every
It's-
meeting,
And to not be, there to be negative consequences if I were to disagree. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Yeah, Yeah.
Yeah, I know superintendents who think. I have no problem with the board coming to me with any kind of ideas anytime, as long
Yeah.
as it's, hey, do this, it's, hey, I heard about this, I heard about that. I wanna learn too, so let me explore it. But yeah, you start to get pressure when they start saying, hey, I got, here's some stuff, and what do you think about this, and what do you think about this, and what do you think about this?
Got some swag.
Yeah,
Mhm.
right.
Yeah, yeah. And it goes back
It's
to
a
that.
conflict of interest.
Well, it goes back to that R word. It's relationship,
Mhm.
relationship, relationship. If you have a good relationship with your superintendent and the superintendent is open to your expertise, I was a college and career advisor in my past life. I might want to talk to my superintendent about things I think that our district could be doing better with college and career advising. But I'm just doing that because I have a whole lot of information and knowledge about it, but I'm not saying we've got to do this. But hey, have you looked at this group that I used to follow and have you, considered this? And so it's all about that trust and respect, the professional respect for each other. I think that's the key where this is not okay, but there are situations where it would be fine to talk to your superintendent about something that's not governance.
I think similar to this is the kind of thing that. Maybe you have a facility question,
Yeah,
like a path, we have a path that needs snowed. Or that needs plowed and it's snowy and that kind of thing. I'm fine with. When we talk about board members having discussions with like. Other people other than the administrative team, right, the principals or the business manager or whatever. I'm a person who is fine with that, with just a heads up or a question. Hey, do you mind if or is this an issue? And I would say, oh yeah, give them a call. I'm fine with that. Let me give them a heads up kind of thing. There are some superintendents that do not want the board talking to any administrators ever other than the superintendent. That's not me at all. And I've told my team the same thing. It's like, if you need to share something with the board, I'm okay with you doing that. Just tell me first you're doing this. I'm not shocked, or CC me on whatever the communication is, because like early on when we were working with each other with Ken and the website, you'd send me this and I'd send it to Ken. And finally it's like, do you mind if I just talk to Ken? I'm like, no, that's fine, right? Because I don't need to know all of the stuff, so. I'm very comfortable with that kind of thing.
It's good, and it's good that they know that. It's good that they know you're comfortable with that, because like you said, some superintendents aren't. That sets you up for a good relationship with your superintendents. You know what their expectations and comfort levels are before.
I just don't want surprises. So
Yeah, you
why
just
you
don't want
let me know,
surprises.
And I'll tell them, so they're not surprised.
Absolutely.
And I expect a call from Emily because she might ask about the.
I feel like that is a little bit of an earned. That's like,
Yes.
in terms of like, again, going back to that concept of policy governance slipping,
Mhm.
it's like. There has, like, that the
Yes.
default is that I never email anybody on your staff. I only email you, even if it's like the toilet's broken.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But, and then you give me permission to go beyond, to go around you. So I just wanna say that like, your willingness to do that is a reflection of your confidence and your competence as a leader.
Yes.
But it's not necessarily something yeah, anyway.
It
Yeah.
doesn't mean that I could just unilaterally start picking up the phone and calling your staff, right? Like-
No, absolutely not. But
No.
if you had a question about, hey, I have a question about what this math program is, and I'm not an expert in that.
Sure,
You know what? You really need to talk to Nicole. Let me tell her that she should expect you to reach out. And do you mind CCing me on the email?
Yeah.
That kind of thing. So
perfect,
you guys can have those discussions. I kind of know what's going on, but I'm not.
perfect. And this sets us up all for the next
That's
slide.
very helpful.
We don't even have to do it. You guys already know it. It's all there. You did it. I mean, what you just said, Joe and Seamus, your discussion right there, and Michelle piping in at the end, that's exactly right. This is just a heads up. It doesn't mean that point is important to remember that the CEO is the one employee of the board and they are the link to the rest of the organization. So we don't want to forget that, and it's really important we don't, but there are times when we do have to talk to staff or we wish to talk to staff, and as long as your CEO is aware of that, the why, then that's fine. Do you want to go over that at all? You guys have seen this, right?
Well, I would just say one thing, the one executive limitation that we have changed in
Yeah.
the last many, many years is that we added an executive limitation that says members of staff
Yeah,
may the superintendent shall not limit staff from communicating with the board about matters of public concern. And so
Relating to superintendent though, right? Wasn't that?
it's just
No.
Is it
matters of public concern. So for example, if, according to our executive limitations, if a staff member thinks the consolidation should have been an alternative to teacher cuts, but the superintendent does not want to do that. Under our executive limitation, they are allowed to tell that to the board directly in any form that they want to without, and so I'm just saying like,
okay,
they don't have to CC you if what they're saying is like, this is a minority report, this is a,
My opinion.
this is my opinion, yeah.
and then what, as a board member, would you do with that email?
So there's two things about it. First of all, it has to be about public concern, so it can't be about like, I wasn't promoted
Right,
for this. And second of all, in our code of conduct, it specifically says we have to like, of all the information that comes in, we have to minimize and only look at the information that's relevant to the board.
okay. That seems like a good guardrail to me, those two. Yeah, and you just revise that EL to reflect that? Okay,
Well, that was a big point of discussion though from the community, that they didn't feel that that was something that needed to have that. Because if you're following policy governance, why do you need that? There's
Well-
sufficient protections.
People said that, well, it should be obvious that if you, and we don't have to rehash it. It's a whole-
Okay. Okay. Well, as long as you're clear on what that policy says and your community is clear, then I don't think there's a problem there.
I
And
just want to say, my interpretation of it is that it's
it's an EL
still,
though.
I only ever email you. I'm never allowed to
Mhm.
call somebody in your
Right.
staff. However, if somebody from your staff calls me, they're allowed to do that as long as it's a matter of public concern with no threat of retaliation.
Mhm.
Right,
That's the bottom
Right.
line.
right. Am I like, let's use the example that you had about somebody came to you talking about, hey, have you considered a retirement incentive or something? And you said that to me, this is a perfect example. This is public concern. And my response was that's great. Also, let that person know that talk to the superintendent about that. That might be a good idea. You
Yeah.
know, we happen to be considering it also. Now, if it's somebody saying, Joe is harassing this person, I don't want you to tell me that. I want you to do your investigation.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Was that a staff member or was that a community member?
A very decorated teacher
Okay,
messaged me on Facebook and
Okay.
said, have you considered buyouts?
okay. It's fine.
Yeah, but I thought that was right. I mean, you did the right thing. You told me about it.
But that exactly is, I think, the guardrail that I like having with that policy. That that people have the freedom to do that without the concern that. Right,
It's gonna come back.
that it's gonna come back and bite them.
Right.
so to our
Perfect
students
example.
sitting here, does this make sense to you? Like if you were to just talk to your classmates about approaching the board? That they wouldn't start at the board level, obviously, right? Like if they had a concern, they would work it up the chain, so they could work with the teacher or the principal. Then if the principal isn't, well, you know, if they feel like there's concerns not being redressed, you could, they could take it to Superintendent Clark, and then if then they still were unhappy as a person or a group of students, you definitely would come to the board.
Right, that's the important thing, is like
Yeah.
making sure it's being addressed, and if it's
Right.
not, then needing to move
Yeah.
upward to make sure that it's being heard.
Right, exactly.
So Debbie, do you
Yeah.
have the other visual of what it wouldn't look like? Cause when I went to the thing this
stakeholders.
week, I was showing them, and there's another cartoon.
Yeah,
Where it shows you, if you don't have this kind of process, the mayhem that
Yeah.
exists. I don't know.
I
if
don't
that's
have
in your
that here.
slide.
no,
I think it's in, well, oh, maybe it's not. It was in the book that we got. But it
Yeah,
imagine
it
you
is.
have, you know, all of your, imagine you've got everyone that's here on the lower level, and then you have like lines going like this. So it's like, if you don't have this kind of process in place, then that's the main.
it's like
That's the
it's the
chaos.
core CEO has multiple bosses, right? And
Yeah.
there's no clarity, and really, they only have one supervisor, and that's the board.
And it's the board as collectively, not the individual voices of the board
Exactly.
also.
Right.
It's really so important.
Yeah, that principle of wholeness is really important to policy governance and to good governance in general. That's something that we talk about with boards of any system of governance in Vermont, as we talk about speaking with one voice as a board. Yeah, for sure. Oh, that's a kettle of worms right there. A couple more scenarios and then we'll move into communication. So while shopping, a parent approaches a board member to complain. This is such the classic example, right? And I chose the PE teacher because I love PE teachers, so I wanted to pick on them. They're having issues with the PE teacher. The child feels left out. The teacher never allows the child to be the team captain. The parent asks the board member to help. And the board member says that they will speak to the superintendent about this on Monday. Oversight, overstep are not a great idea. Yeah, yeah, both.
Well, it
Well-
depends how it's presented. Is
Tell
it,
them.
let me help you, I care about what you're saying. Please, here's the superintendent's information, get in contact with them. That's okay.
Yeah, I would say that. I would say oversight in that sense.
But the board member says they're gonna call the superintendent on Monday.
No, okay. I didn't
Yeah.
know that.
In fact, I would say, have you talked to the principal?
Principal, start at the lowest level.
Yeah.
Tell
Is
them
it,
that you need to
Go back to the
start at the
diagram.
lowest level, principal
Yeah,
at
for
that
sure.
school. You don't get satisfaction there, then bump it up.
Yeah,
But yes.
Yeah,
going,
agree.
You know, from a parent in the store to the board member to, you know,
Mhm.
absolutely.
yeah. Yeah, and there's great, like, you know what I suggest is that you have like a canned response for a scenario like that. So that, cause it can be, especially if somebody's visibly upset, I mean, God, we really protect our kids, like, you don't wanna come across as unsympathetic.
Right, and this is why, because all I'm gonna do is call the principal anyway.
Yeah.
So now the principal knows that the board is in on it, and that adds stress to them to think that maybe they're in a corner about how they need to interact.
To address it, yeah, yeah.
And this is like, I think it would be cool on our website if there was a page that's like who to talk to. And it's like curriculum, when I
That's a
didn't
good
know
idea.
who to talk to about curriculum. And, you know, yesterday, a person on the community who has been on 2 superintendent search committees, former elementary school teacher, highly connected to the board, she came up to me and she's like, I'm not sure who to talk to about this. Like, there's this particular position that the budget might be cutting. Like, do I, you know, and I think that this position could be shared with the city. And so the answer to the question that you were just asking the students about whether they know that you're supposed to talk to the superintendent for the board, the answer is nobody remembers that ever.
Yeah. Well, a board brochure could be something helpful. I was just saying if I have mine there, we have a trifold that I haven't done it since before pandemic, but we used to have a little trifold that we just put around the school in town offices and hand them out at meetings, and it showed that whole, not that hourglass diagram, but that whole, how you get your issue addressed.
Right.
How you get your concern
That's a good idea.
considered.
You guys probably also, we just sent one out to the entire staff about who in central
Yeah.
office is responsible for it.
But even like on the district, and I'm not telling you what to do, but like on the district website, like, there's like a complaint form. And I think the complaint form, a problem in the past has been that the complaint form doesn't say how it's gonna be routed, it doesn't say, you know, and so like.
Kind of like a flow chart.
Well, yeah, and so it's like, there's probably opportunities for, in the point where a community member would come in and file a complaint, to educate them about, well, this complaint's gonna go here. And
Yeah.
then they're like, oh, I don't need to file a complaint, I can just go talk to my principal, right?
Oh.
And even on the complaint form, I tried it before, back in like May timeframe, and I plugged in something and said, you know, I'd really like to know when this is received, like, where does it go? Hit submit, never received a response. So it's like, to me,
Oh, you're
it
right on that.
loses a little bit of credibility if you put something out there.
Yeah.
And then there's nothing.
Yeah, I
Thing
agree with
thickens.
that.
Yeah.
Nothing.
But that is a good point to try to head off. It may not need to be a complaint. Have you thought about changing feedback? Like, I think we use a tool. What's it called? Where it's just a form that you fill out. It doesn't have to be a complaint. It could be an issue, a question, it could be anything. And
Well, it was because of our training that we went to. Emily and Laura and I went to the training
Yeah.
and we heard that, and there was a demonstration and somebody had put it up what they had. And I
Yeah.
was like, that's a great idea. So we came back, we started something like that,
yeah,
but that's my point. It was
Yeah.
like, oh yeah, here it is. Isn't this great?
yeah. But you gotta
But
promote it
there's
too.
nothing coming out of the backside,
Yeah,
throwing it into
Huh.
a black hole.
So then, our homepage has something to get in touch with SBSD, have a suggestion, concern, or question, would you like, use this Google form to send your comment.
oh,
I
cool.
don't know, I'm gonna put in a test, because I have no clue where it goes.
Yeah, that's.
That's-
what
I
I'm
love
talking
that.
about.
That could be, if nobody's watching that Google form,
Oh, it says
This is
that,
Joe,
yeah,
please
who
respond.
would you like to receive this comment? I'm gonna put everybody.
So I think that like, I go back to the work plan. I feel like there's an opportunity
Yeah.
just for a website thing. I don't want to go off the topic, but
Yeah.
I just feel like that's why we need a work plan.
Yeah.
is I keep saying like the parking lot, but it's all these things
yeah,
that.
to
we got.
capture in one place. Yep. That's,
Time check 30 minutes,
no, 55.
55.
All right, so we're gonna get to my exercise on communications. It kills me. Okay, gonna do that one. I wanna do this one and to get the students to say something about this one. A proud board member posted on his Facebook account when the local high school basketball team won the state's championship game. He posted a photo of the team and congratulated them on a well done.
Point of
On a
order,
job well
where did
done.
he get the photo?
Huh?
Here's my thought on
Well,
it.
they were at the game and they took a photo of the team and they put it on there.
As a student,
Yeah,
my question would go to. If the board members only posting the basketball team, why are they choosing
that's all.
that specific team to post and
There was
none
the
of
girls' basketball team.
and none of the other teams?
Yeah, The
So why are you?
The cheerleading team won the state championship and
Yeah.
nobody posted, no board member posted their photo.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so
to
unequal.
congratulate them. Yeah,
Good point.
I think posting photos of students is not a good idea.
Yeah,
because you
Can
asked,
work.
where did the photo come
If it came from the newspaper, then it's fine.
Can of worms, there's no, there's,
from?
right, it's neutral in the best scenario.
Unless your child's on the
Yeah,
high
that's
school
it.
basketball team.
And all,
If your mom-
The championship freshman year.
and also like, if you. If it's a news report where there's consent from the photo already from the news, like as a politician, you are, I think, absolutely allowed. To increase community engagement by promoting success. And of course, like, that's a consideration, are you doing it equally across teams? But as a politician, you have leeway to. As long as you're not by, you shouldn't have taken the picture.
we don't
This
have
isn't,
access to.
this is a weird question, because number one, it's oversight, it's, but if you're just a board member and if it's your kid on the team and you're at the game and it's your private Facebook.
Yeah.
I don't see the problem. I mean, I hear
Yeah.
what you're saying, but if
Mhm.
I'm there, my kid's on the team poses for a photograph. There's no expectation of privacy in public. You take the photograph and you post it on your personal
Yeah.
with the congratulations. I don't see the problem.
I would agree with that. I think it's easy to be very conservative on this and say no, but I also think that. Yeah, even whether your kid's on the team or not, but if it's going on your private Facebook page, I'm not putting it on a district page. That's-
Yeah,
that's
I
what
don't have a
say.
problem with this either. To Ali's point, I think you need to be self-aware about being inclusive of other groups, but just to take a photo of a public event, right? You go to a choir concert or band concert, that's open to the public. So even if those kids have, do not disclose my, that is not the same, because they are participating in a public event. That, I don't have a problem with it, but again, I think you're right.
Especially if
All
you're
I'm
not-
doing is I'm posting the varsity boys team every time,
Mhm.
That's-
even if it's
yeah.
my personal Facebook, people know I'm a board member, hey, what do you support?
Right, yeah.
Mhm.
I was
Yeah.
just gonna say, like, not, maybe, I don't know if I would put, I'm such a proud South Burlington board member
No.
Right, I
along
don't
with,
think
it's like, keep it just about.
Congratulations, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Couldn't
not
be
connecting
advertising
to-
that.
Yeah.
It's really hard to take off that board hat. And what, to Joe's point, I think is that like. That even though it's your private Facebook account and there's nothing wrong with that, you have every right to be proud. It's people still see you. As their elected representative.
Or trustee.
Yeah,
This feels similar to me, it's like when Emily said, I'd like to come into the school just to celebrate what's going on.
Yeah.
Right, and Joe saying, well, hey, it's hard because people in the building might only see you as a board member that's very well intended, it's within your rights as a parent, but like, you need to be aware of that. And I agree, this should not be a problem. I don't personally have a problem with this,
Mhm.
but I think it just creates challenges as a board member and like, there's nothing inherently wrong with it, but it's in the not a great idea category where like somebody could make a complaint about it for some reason, right? Oh, I want that photo of my student on your page, you're a board member, you said this thing that I don't agree with, like. That's my stance, is just this is where it is possibly too conservative here, and I wish I didn't have this view. But I think it's just easier not to do it because of what it opens up. And the inability for you to designate in public to people who might not know you, I'm a parent, I'm a board member, I'm a community member, right? Like, they don't necessarily know the context of how you're publishing this, so just don't do it.
So and I respect that point too. And would not disagree with anybody who decided I'm not gonna post that, right? I would say that. Visiting inside a school is a completely different dynamic, right? Because that is not a public open forum, and there, we do need to make certain of. That we will only post two photos of kids who have given that.
True.
And even outside of school there, I mean, in other words, just because you're not in the building doesn't. If you're on the playground playing, there's still a school activity. But
True.
a public concert, a public game, those kinds of things. Where anybody can come in, take a picture, the press can be there, take a picture, and they don't need the. For instance, when the press does a news story, right, the news comes in, they will only film kids' feed, and they'll make sure not to do that, but they don't worry about that at a football game because.
It's a public event.
Right, okay, yeah, these are how good
What
points.
that has, I realized that something that, when I say that a board member might post something on Facebook in order to, you know, in a political sense, and going back to this trustee thing, keep coming back to that. I'm like, there's something there, but I'm trying to figure out what it is, and I realized that my belief is that the thing that we are trustees of is like the legitimacy of the school district. In terms of like taxation without representation, so like if there is a way that you can use a public event of the school district to like make the community feel like this is a valuable asset that we are taking care of well and that their tax dollars are well spent, I feel like that is a case where you want to do it. And it's like, and being really risk averse and not doing it, what you're doing is you're maybe avoiding some risk of being misinterpreted because maybe it'll make staff uncomfortable that you're only posting a certain team. But on the other hand, what you're doing is you're not defending the legitimacy of the district, which will then be very problematic in the future. So I think that you, like in the past, I know when I got on this board for the first time, I felt like there was a high aversion to saying, you know, it was like the social media policy was set in 2018. It says, don't go on social media, it's dangerous. So everybody on the board never went on social media. And that was just the default answer. It's too dangerous, don't even go there. And it's like, well, what's happened is that most of a large portion of the non-school community, I mean, there's like 8,000 people in the Facebook groups for South Burlington, many of whom are not school community. In order to reach those people and build legitimacy among them,
You have to post.
Go where the people.
or the people.
So here's a question for you. Does the district have its own social media accounts? Like, do you have Facebook and school board, Instagram? No, the district
We have-
itself.
Yeah, we have Facebook, Instagram, and post stuff.
I was gonna suggest that. Awesome. That's exactly what that's what I do. And I'm not on social media anymore. But when I was on Facebook, if I saw something related to the district that the district posted, I would just repost it, share it.
But here's the thing, the district is not political. The district is not allowed to be political. Like the school board itself, this whole concept of the school board speaking with one voice, in the statutes, it says that we can only inform the community as a board. And so the board itself is limited in what we can do to build the legitimacy of the school board of the district. On the other hand, individual school board members have free speech and can politically advocate for the interests of the school board or for the school district. And so I think that that's where a policy where we said the board speaks with only one voice and the board only posts through the official channels, we're actually dramatically limiting our ability to build legitimacy for the school district.
So I'm gonna, I wanna push back, but I'm not going to because of time, but I made myself a note. I'm gonna send you on Monday, no, not Monday, Tuesday, our social media resource. And you take it for what you will, but I do remember one thing in that resource that it says is, of course you're entitled as a private individual to do these things. And there's nothing illegal, there's maybe arguably nothing unethical about posting. But there could be consequences and
Yes.
unintended consequences that you don't even know about. And so that doesn't, so you just have to square that somehow, like, it's my right. And I should be able to do this, but there could be some consequences, positive or negative. So just be aware. And I'm gonna send you that social media handbook for boards. And just take a look at it and see, it's very short and you can decide what you want. But it's a big topic. I did a whole training on 2 hours just on the use of social media. So it's a huge topic.
So if I don't have social media, do I have to take a training?
I say, you don't have to come to the training and I shouldn't have to come because I don't have it either, so. But anyway, yeah. All right. Do you want to take a stretch? Because we're kind of coming into the home stretch. We're gonna get you out here even maybe a little bit before 1. Before we go into communicating as a school leader and we leave roles and responsibilities and everything else that we talked about behind. Any final questions or for the good of the order? Anything you want to say, ask, that's not too big of a question or a topic? You good? Feeling good? All right. All right, do you want to take a 2-minute stretch break, go to the bathroom, everybody, before I give directions? Because that way nobody misses directions. Sure. That'd be good, huh?
Scratches.
The one working. I figured it out. I'm glad there was signage on the.
I only got it.
Board members are
I'm concerned, I
represented
understand. She came back and
in this.
So when I
is
put
not-
it on the other side.
There's no way.
Wait, no.
That's why.
I know, and I thought.
Actually,
Are we here to do it with the representation, we know about, right? Are we here? Suffering.
It's like a republic, the senators are enabled to like do what they think is best.
I don't think we ever got standard, like standard.
You're only allowed to be a project. So yeah, it's.
I think it probably has that layer too. I'm thinking more unvisited. What does I think should be passed out. Representative.
Yeah.
But there are.
But what I'm saying, many people say that America doesn't do it. And so the public is where there's more agency at the level of the legislature to do things that is not what the public necessarily asked it to do. Anyway, I'm agreeing with you that there is a age-old debate.
Yeah. And I don't believe that it's solved here. I don't believe that we can claim to be on one side or the other. But when I think in our context, the notion of participatory democracy is absolutely 100%. Because the community votes on the budget, right? We don't do everything by referendum and how, because that would be non-functional, right? So there is a level of trusteeship. But because we have that participatory part.
Yeah, when I was.
People, and there's, what we will never do is do that in a representative.
Oh, no, yes.
Because
Something
we only have 3% of our population that votes and far too many that pay attention to anything we say. So
When.
it's not completely solvable. It's a great theoretical conversation, right? And all we do is do our best. And I fall more on the side of, we need to hear from people, and that needs to matter what we say and do. And it has to be to our best ability, not listening to just the loudest or one group of or one set of. So, yeah, but that participatory part is the part that I think really gives us that expected link. To take that input, right? Because, yeah, we could operate in isolation, we're doing what's best for everybody, whatever. But
Attention.
it's gonna be, we've seen it, so right, our budget doesn't fit in. I have voted yes. A decade.
Love it, so.
No.
Then I haven't voted yes.
That would give you, I mean, I
I
think.
think I voted yes on the one that was like less than a percent.
75.
Yeah, that's always fun, so I have to FaceTime with them. Then, that's Christmas.
So that's, I wanted to do that this year, but I understand that we can't.
Well, maybe we could have, but I.
Steve, that's
I think that.
Last time I went to Thanksgiving, if I'm only stopping to use the restroom and gas up.
It's a new free side.
No, it's really, but it's fun.
I mean, I think the thing about
In your house,
Yeah,
your wife.
it's like,
That's fantastic.
Yeah, so I might.
There's like-
$100. Yeah.
there's the decisions that are popular.
Which is a.
Unpopular. For the whole public. That's just the whole public. And then there's the like, big different public wants, right? And there's a little bit of a out. And like, like a drone politician, all they do is they just do this, they just do the what the public wants. But then like a good transformational politician, right, then helps to shift what the public wants a little bit more towards
Yep.
the unpopular thing. And so that's like, in the words of the past, it's so restrictive. Yes, yes.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like there's a whole ethos. Here we are. We're like impartial.
Oh, yeah, somebody complained.
Well, this is it. So my city, people are gonna like it, but we followed our policies, so therefore that's the only decision.
It's my opinion.
Boy,
Sometimes they'll give you like a.
and that's, I think it's broader, it's still like that, people like you're having like, you know, lime.
All right, so there's
You got those far, and that's what.
Try to do it, it's like all.
It's like, you know, it's so far ahead of where everything started to get done, instead of getting done to legislative.
I think it's just.
I felt like the growth in. Outside, I mean, you know, but what's the biggest. The most resources.
So where-
Like the most embarrassing.
It's some side is Russian.
Don't need to. Yeah. We have. Those houses.
Are we all back? I think so. We have a quorum. All right, we're gonna interrupt here and jump in and get us going on our exercise.
Yeah. We're like, oh.
All right, are you guys ready for this? The snowflake activity? Okay, I was putting you guys in two anyway. Okay, good. All right, so I'm just gonna have you count off by twos. So Seamus, you're one. Michelle's two.
Two, one.
2, 1, 2.
Oh, sorry, Joe, I'm not gonna have you do this.
Okay.
I'm so sorry.
That's great.
That was rude of me. Sorry, you're getting kicked out. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Okay, so 2, Emily and Michelle. Austin and Seamus. And Moman and Laura.
Jen.
Or sorry, Jen.
Yep.
And Ally and Dan. Okay, those are your working groups. So this is called the snowflake activity. So you guys have done it, both of you? Okay, well then you're gonna be experts at it. So whoever's paired with them is gonna be good, position. So basically, very minimal instructions. I'm gonna give each of you guys are gonna be sitting back to back where you don't see each other. And you're each going to have a piece of paper. And you're gonna fold it in half. And I'm also gonna give you a pair of scissors. And I'm gonna give you 10 minutes to talk to each other, back to back. And the only rule is you cannot look at each other and you can't look at each other's work. And you're going to try to cut out similarly shaped snowflakes. And we're gonna see who comes closest to that. And then just talk about how this applies to what we do as school board members.
I haven't done this in scratch.
See, I think I used to do this in primary school. I feel like this was something, I did it recently at a conference and we had a lot of giggles over it. Yeah, not an easy task.
What are the rules again?
So the only two rules are you are not allowed to look at each other. And you are not allowed to look at each other's,
Well, we're allowed to talk.
you're absolutely allowed to talk.
And we have to somehow come up with the same.
Snowflake pattern. And Joe is gonna go around and with me and then make sure the rules are being enforced.
There's directions on how to.
I don't know.
Hi, Ally, you're in good hands. I have scissors.
We do this with our peer leadership classes. So when you're a slam leader as a senior and you're going into freshman advisories, we do a very similar activity.
Are there like a limit or a minimum number of cuts you have to make? Cause you can't just say that and slice and we're done. right? Give me my strategy.
Yeah, that's where you have an
That's
executive limitation.
That's-
Okay. Yeah.
I like that.
All right.
That's taking shortcuts. All right, so let's go. Grab some scissors, grab your papers, put yourself wherever you want with your partner.
Depends on
I'm gonna give you, do you want big scissors or little scissors? I have both,
strength.
right? Depending on where you're.
Yeah, you can pick a little.
I don't want, yeah, like my people, I think, I don't want to.
Bigger, little, whatever you're.
Whether or not.
Although that may impact, it may impact the outcome.
Become a son leader without the one.
Good.
You just.
I'm not left-handed, I was. You are? Right, used to. I'm sure you're. Yeah. Oh, yeah, you make words.
I'll buy it.
Thank you. In the left-handed.
Yeah.
I mean, the same.
I probably wouldn't be able to use it.
Otherwise, the distance.
That was always hard. It's really college classes.
All right.
Yeah.
Is that
The little.
You need that.
Right.
And we're gonna start now, and we're gonna go to, oh, I love that big clock. Let's do 10 minutes, so like just before the big hand hits the right?
Okay, we just have.
Okay, go ahead. Remember, talking only. So, I haven't told you this one.
So my thought is most snowflakes are amazing how they're just.
Okay.
So you want left, right?
First to split.
So you wanna make.
Along.
Higher.
Yeah, so that it's a square. Or we could do, if you unfold it, then you make it as a triangle, and we use. Oh, right, along the sleeves, this is my percent, so that it's bigger, it's like a rectangle, then you can move in this way. Okay, so if you have the full system, you know, on trusted everything. If you hold it up in front of you, or you take the top right corner and you fold it over to the left side, there are, see how it makes the like right triangle? Yes. Yes, so that it aligns with the size.
I know, right? Sean, it's for the two fold this kind of.
Exactly.
Okay.
Wait, how are you holding it? Are you holding it?
Basically snipping that thing off.
Yep.
That
So
corner.
basically snip the corner off. Yes.
Can I just let you?
Direction.
I would love for you to do the direction.
Quick question for you, are you holding it so that?
Is that feel like that
all
last
way?
I
I can give it a shot, I have no sideways.
Oh, me, it works.
So,
I guess,
I feel like I need it. If you're holding
I
it sideways, it really, the top three corners.
Okay, so we did the corners.
Oh,
That corner. So now. You'll see.
Yeah. Top three corners. So the bottom. Paper. Not the bottom. The paper, and then you should see it when you pull it down, okay, that like side that was on your baby, now lines up with the bottom and it's like triangle. And then there's.
But. I was sort of like, on that side.
So we.
I love that. You guys are so cute. Feeling on the folding of the ankle for like 5 minutes.
Let's try it.
I'll break the corner.
It's definitely towards the left of the middle. It's, I don't know, like, you hold it all the way back. You should have something that looks like a huge airplane. And then you have that like rectangle, like in one sheet, just straight in.
Straight up.
Straight in.
Now, and that,
So then you want to cut off that rectangle, so you only have the triangles now.
kind of on each side of the. Little,
Yes, so you only have the triangles which are
about a centimeter apart. Back to the.
That's like parallel, so it's for. Yes. We don't need it.
I like it.
And how far in?
So kind of go out a centimeter and start there. First step.
Yeah, and sure.
Hi, and one more side, yeah. I don't really know if I can.
Okay, great. So now you're gonna take the two corners that is not.
And going all the way so that they're basically a centimeter from your last end to the edge.
Side.
Got an upside down pyramid. Do you know, to the bottom of that pyramid is the right hand side? Right, it is basically there. So
Yeah.
just a little, it's centimeters.
Yeah.
Okay, so the two other
Yeah.
corners, you're gonna fold those, so those are together.
And then,
So it's just gonna be a
Oh, and
small
how
triangle.
long have you gone on this?
And then do we wanna, about it once more?
Oh, perfect.
Do we wanna keep? Okay. Let's build it up to more. You're gonna see the same, it's like your mind, so it's not an even split. It's just sitting there looking at it, it's so nice to go here. I don't know.
Well done, lady.
How long is your thing? Is it about the length of, at the end of the scissors? Like any side of
You take that, if that we did, the, as our holding.
Yeah.
I only get. Okay, so I. After most of our.
Okay, so, yeah, now are those finding.
Okay, so now, you know the side that has the bound, and then not the sides that,
Right.
Yep.
Okay. Great.
Yes, those sides, that's one we wanna cut from first.
And stuff.
So,
So, not, yeah.
so what do we want to do? We want to make triangles?
Well, I say we're cutting that side forward. And
Three triangles. So you're just gonna,
that line.
you're just gonna try to space.
That house, like about 3 round parts.
Yes, you'll make, because the end is one another.
It's right in the,
Or
sort of the opposite.
Yes, you're not
Right
ready.
in the middle of that.
Yes.
So on either side.
And how tall you want that triangle?
Got it.
And then maybe like.
And about the size of my.
Halfway up to 6.
Sure. They should all just be.
That's gonna just hold that.
Yes.
Okay.
Those pieces were just be longer. We just want 30 of them. Might not go, I'm not gonna go all the way from.
Yeah, but we should do
Yes. How about if we push it back over, so it's got, vertical edge, vertical edge.
I did a little bit, okay.
And go in the middle of the bowl. And, yeah, cut out.
Yeah, yeah, and we, I write it in front of them.
With basically in the middle of the guy, so that the,
Like, it's a long, I saw they used to try. Yep.
About 2 inches. On either side. Is the middle of the paper on the edge side.
And it's sort of opposite from the heart, is that correct?
It's kind of, if you're holding it the same way, bring back.
So now, on the side, I think if you're in a triangle further on, the side on the right,
Okay.
which should have like 3 edges. We should do something there too. Do we wanna do, how about we do squares? Do we wanna do 3 squares there too? 2 squares, okay.
Superman, thank you, Superman. Yeah, that was something.
Maybe this is, like, start after that. Triangle is just, is my hair. Do you know what I mean by that? The bottom, right? And how tall do we want them to? Let's cut another part. Exactly. Yes, where we start, and how far are we facing to try? It's very far. The same distance as we're doing one straight corner or
Along the long edge, next to the heart.
So the heart is already on the bottom.
Yes.
And then to the right, we have our side corner.
I do want to go
Yeah,
back.
I think this is like part to the smoothie bed.
Okay.
Same size.
Okay.
So you fold over your. And
Now,
confidence.
I have all of these corners. That's not fair.
Yeah, no, that's, yeah, okay,
Oh, that was the first, yeah.
so there, there's, so we're cutting it into this to now.
Yes,
All
yes.
are going out, and then, and in that direction. That's my heart farm.
My heart's. Okay. How are we doing? We have 2 minutes to go. Perfect, 2 minutes, sure. Okay, let's, so the half fringe, half folded and triangle.
I.
Okay. Is on the left. And then the part, yeah, on the left. And so that part, the bottom, that is like facing me. And I know it's not the. Are you guys? I think that's probably just good time. Or good. Yeah, I prefer water is always like. No.
Okay, I'm thinking half circle on the left side. The left, no side.
Got a heart there.
Like
So, yeah, you've got the fringe on one side.
yeah. Between the, like, because the square goes out and then you have the triangle goes out of that, I only really have to go right of that.
Okay, I'm gonna put a heart. And then we cut a heart, kind of across from where
Yes.
it's trying.
Ironic.
Oh, no, I don't have one.
Oh,
I have, yeah, no, I think so.
oh, okay, then you cut a heart there. 'Cause I just-
See, okay.
50 seconds. And if you're done, you can turn around and look at each other's work.
Now that's gonna be fun.
All right.
Are you ready?
Please bring, snowflake.
Nice.
Okay. Are we all done? Okay, what are you ready for that? Yep.
Oh, triangle. This is left-handed, right-handed, right? We're starting to do some.
Okay.
Oh, no, we had.
Oh.
Alright, let's see. Well, the difference is the size. Yeah,
I mean, look at the scraps of paper on them, that's what I was looking at, like. Here's some different
It's
sizes.
a different notion of what 2 inches.
Sure, your measurements were a little different.
Right, yeah, this is what my triangle was looking at, yeah, that's why we have minor, but this is, yeah. I mean, ours don't have it, right? I think you did a pretty good job.
Okay.
How'd you guys do?
It will show our.
I know, I thought.
You look hard.
I think
We only had one thing, and that was that.
Gotta show off your own sign.
2 hours.
I said 3 sides, and I didn't think about,
They're minor.
Yeah, so if you fold it up, there's an issue, set it out, or.
So one, two, square.
Oh.
She said.
We also are here. You've got.
But then this one also has.
Oh,
I forgot to cut it.
I put the funny thing.
You guys, you started off really slowly, I was worried about you.
Oh, yeah.
How did you sew?
I did.
I had,
About 10
I like cutting like the grease.
And it's a.
Yeah.
Oh, I folded mine in half, this was the. Right here.
Oh.
That was,
Yes, thank you.
oh,
I think at some point I just folded.
I just put mine on the.
Away.
oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Triangles match.
Yeah.
Wait, I wanna see.
I wouldn't know.
I know, I used to have Ally, huh, who's done this before.
You got a ringer, it's not fair.
I know you had an experience.
Like the full.
All right, so hold up your snowflakes. I want to see everybody's snowflakes and
Moment, did
see.
you catch out?
Oh,
Right there.
So
good snowflake.
our only mistake was that we switched our sides for where we put the squares and the circle. That was very good.
Okay, let's,
That's really
yeah, you
good.
guys are very close. These two,
School teacher.
these two are pretty close too.
Oh, yeah.
The only difference is that this circle is more horizontal. Austin's is more vertical. They kept it.
That
You
looked
guys
like an
didn't-
anthropological mask. with
Does-
the snowflake.
Seems like.
Yeah, I went with the masks, yeah, it looks like a luchador.
And how did you, let's see,
Mine's
Oh.
a little bit more rounded,
I
but we've got
get
the triangles.
you got the,
Yeah.
so which two groups do you think did
The best.
The best?
I think it's a,
Those
these two and these two did a
Yeah,
really good
yeah.
job.
Yeah.
Is that consensus? You guys get my very last Ben and Jerry's coupons. I only have 4 left. And they expire.
I can know that.
Harder if you need Ben and Jerry's to talk to you.
Oh, sorry,
No.
wrong one. I'm getting my, this is Dan.
So out of curiosity,
So that,
did you two go back and forth with directions, or did one person take the lead and say, this is what we're doing? And everybody, and I'm just curious.
I was like, she's like,
Tell me
if
what
you
to
wanna, like, just tell me.
So she told, she was in charge.
I gave direction.
Yeah.
And Dan asked questions.
Okay.
Clarify.
And-
Yeah.
That seemed to work well.
What about you two?
Exact same.
Yeah.
And we tried to focus on fewer number of cuts.
Yeah.
So we're like limited steps, one person
Yeah.
with direction, one person asking questions.
Neither Michelle nor I wanted to be in
In
charge,
charge.
so we went back and forth.
I think, you know what, I think that's a really good point, like, you've gotta know, like, who's driving the horse, right?
Yeah.
You can't have two people, you know.
that I was a little worried about in this case. I was like, who's gonna do it?
Be driving snow foot.
What, one thing I noticed walking around is those that got a slower start did better in the end. Cause you guys spent a lot of time with that one fold, the way you were telling Dan how to fold. And then you guys were trying to get your terminology correct. I heard you talking about radius. Yeah. Yeah, and I heard, I was like, oh gosh, they're gonna run out of time before they even make a cut. And yet, look at how well you, like, those came out really well. So some of that planning, I think, and that trying to get on the same page.
Measure twice, cut once.
Yeah, measure, exactly, measure twice, yeah, yeah. Or was it was it Edison or,
Washington, the cherry tree.
no, I was thinking of the quote that,
Sharpen the axe.
oh, no, I was thinking the quote that says, I think I spend 80% of my time thinking about the problem and 10% like trying to fix it. Like, I think it was Edison. I can't remember, but it's
Totally true.
But I also think it's
It's
really
so true.
important to start with the end in mind and think about what do you want it to look like? And for us, we were trying to figure it out as we were going, like we've never done a snowflake, so it's hard to, like, I think. You know, going back, I'd say, let's go look at what a snowflake should look like.
right.
And then how would you create that? Okay, now we can align on it versus, you know,
Yeah,
figuring it out as you go.
yeah, yeah.
So the question you have on the board is what is leadership?
Yeah.
And when you had the question on the board of governance versus management,
Yeah,
I think another thing that can be confused is management and leadership and governance and leadership. And I think that you can be you can be both a good leader and a good manager.
Mhm.
And I think that that's required for a superintendent, right? Leader
Yeah.
and
Yeah, I don't think that's an honest dichotomy, to be honest with, like, that it's, you're a leader or you're a manager.
right, oh, it's not a
You know what I mean?
dichotomy.
And I think that this is what, and I also feel this, that if you, a bad leader and a good manager can keep a job forever, but not be necessarily very successful. A great leader and a bad manager, can be very motivational, but not the job, right? I think that you have to have a good blend, not only set a vision, but be able to get things done.
To get things done, and that's the same dynamic on the governance side, is that you can be good governors and bad leaders. And you will lose all the legitimacy that you ever had, and that's what I think has happened. Sorry, past boards, I think that's what's happened, is that they focus too much on governance and not enough on leadership. And I think the leadership on our side means political effectiveness.
Yeah, and I think too much leadership without management is chaos, and people will not stand for chaos.
so in taking this activity and what you've learned about communicating and how hard it is, especially if you can't see the other person, you can only rely on your words. That's not the way it is in a board meeting, right? You see each other, you're able to have that body language, but how could this make you more of an effective communicator among yourselves as a board, as well as between you and your community?
I'm not sure, answer questions.
Yeah.
Ask for clarifying questions. I heard that a lot, especially with Michelle and Emily. I heard you talking.
What does 2 inches mean to you?
Yeah.
Well, that's why I said, the size of your thumb. But we have different thumb sizes, I didn't think about that.
Yeah,
We use the scissors.
Yeah, that's smart. We like the
I
brand.
thought you two
We
did
did, but
that.
we had different size scissors.
Same size, scissors.
Should have thought about that. Success favors the prepared, and we thought about
In
that.
terms of,
I
There
heard- Sorry, I heard somebody say before
Uh-huh.
about, well, there's different size scissors, so it's like, we made sure.
You had the same size.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you know, I think we heard you guys say that, and I was thinking, because we have to calibrate our equipment.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, what does this mean to you? Well, where's the fist scars? We're like, see where that is? And you cut to the F.
I heard you say that. I didn't understand what you were talking about. Did you have the same size scissors?
Yeah.
I thought fist scars was some technical snowflake line.
No. The scissors
Scissors, yeah.
It's the brand of scissors.
And we were calculating like, okay, now cut to, like, if you're looking at a clock, 12 o'clock, go to 3.
I heard that too.
And now go
Very
to 11 o'clock.
So how does that translate to when you talk to members of the public? How would that?
when you write an article for the other paper or
Yeah.
a posting on Facebook or an email, there's a tool that can test the grade level of the language.
Uh-huh.
Make sure that your grade level is 8th grade,
Yeah,
because it's not just for 8th graders, it's also for my neighbor. You know, I walk in, I'm showing my neighbor an op-ed that I wrote. It's a husband and wife. They're both in their 80s. I hand it to the wife. She reads it in about 20 seconds flat. Hand it to the husband. It takes him a minute and a half to read it. Because they're just different, and so you go, and so like, I think it is super important for board members to just write to 8th grade.
yeah, And also I was thinking about the terminology that we use, all the acronyms and especially in budgeting season, it's crazy. It's like we're speaking a whole different language. CLAs, essays, LTWADMs. I mean, like, there's so much that when we go in front of our public, our owners and present our annual budget, I think being really clear what we're trying to, like, what we're saying and try to avoid some of those technical terms or have a glossary of terms if you have to. I think even new board members get lost, and I'm looking at a lot of you are going through the budget season for the first time, and it is going to be tough because there's a lot you have to learn. But after a while, you become desensitized. You're like, everybody knows what a long-term weighted average daily membership is. Or everybody knows that when the CLA goes down, your taxes go up. Like, you start to realize that people don't all know this. So to your point, Seamus, which is good, is like, remember, meet them where they're at, meet your public where they're at, and really try to speak normal, everyday language and,
Make it digestible.
And like, that comes back to being short, and simple is hard. Being concise is hard.
And I think that talking like that will also help people feel less intimidated to
Yeah.
ask questions.
Yeah.
Because if they're assuming that you're assuming that they know what you're talking
Yeah.
about, I, as a board member, haven't wanted to be like, I've even thought to myself, am I allowed to ask this question?
Yeah.
And of course I'm allowed to ask the question, but there's been so much like shroud over the budget, like
Yeah.
process that it feels like if I'm asked this question, then like it makes it seem like I don't know what I'm talking about, or
Absolutely.
is this something that I even have there's a lot of just concern about what you're allowed to say and not allowed to say, and you don't want to sound stupid. So I think keeping it at a level that feels friendly for other people to communicate with is really important.
And also, it's your job to ask, it's your job to look stupid on behalf of your constituents,
Yeah.
like literally.
I agree. I mean, I feel like it is a vulnerability that you have to show up and say, I don't understand. And I think you've got to be okay with that. And it goes back to, are you in an environment where you can trust the people that you're with? Right? Because if you say, I don't get it, help explain it to me. And hopefully the people that are explaining it to you, they could be operational people, are going to do it in a way that's kind and that it's clear. Because if we don't get it and we're in it all the time, I can't even imagine what your neighbor is thinking or others that,
Well, I remember we were
aren't
talking
here.
about policy governance in the beginning when I first got here, and then someone said, well, nobody can get it, even if you've been in it for years. And I thought to myself, well,
That's not
what's the
right.
point? Why are we using it then? If no one understands how to use it, it doesn't make
Yeah.
any sense. And I don't believe that to be true.
Exactly.
We can make it a place where people can understand it.
And the dark side is if there is such a thing as a board being captured by the organization that it is supposed to govern.
Mhm.
Like, I remember my first CEO, she would get on with her board. This is a private company, and then she would call me back because I was one of the founders, and she'd just start chuckling because she was a long-term corporate executive, and she would just chuckle about how she had the board in her pocket. And one of the ways that a well-meaning board can be captured by an institution is when the institution makes the board feel uncomfortable about like, well, oh yeah, that's the LTADM of the CCP. And then the board is just like, oh yeah, and the board starts to believe that its job is to learn all the acronyms, CLA, December 1 letter, what's the tax burden versus the whatever. And it's like, that is a very dark path to go down because then,
Deliberately confuse.
yeah. And so I think so as long as we think we should look stupid, because if we feel like we don't understand what's going on, somebody listening or
Sure.
is definitely.
That's to me, you're getting snowed. You're just like, all this stuff and you can't decipher it. And that's
Getting bombarded with information.
information, too much information, which I've gone back and looked at policy governance. And one of the things that's very clear in there is that from a superintendent for policy monitoring and the information, it's enough that that your board can understand, that it's clear, that it's not just here's pages and pages with links and links. I mean, it's,
Yeah.
you're buried.
Yeah, you don't wanna have your superintendent bring in evidence that they need a truck, a U-Haul to unload, right? I mean, yeah, that's true.
And then you're thinking about how are we getting through this timely and
Yeah.
effectively,
Yeah.
and then how is there
Yeah.
transparency to what's happening? If
Yeah.
it's so complicated, then it's not.
And I was thinking about what Joe was saying about shutting off at 8 p.m. and how that's been something we've been talking about, and I do think time is important. We came from a place where we were having 4 or 5 hour meetings, but nothing was getting done. And I think we are not opposed to going over 8 p.m.
No,
as long as we're moving forward in a
Yeah.
direction together instead of just.
do you have
and then-
one meeting a month or two? Two, okay.
But what I've heard also.
More like 4 to 5.
Well, what I also lately, but I feel like that's gonna scale back. But what I've heard and seen is that a good functioning board should be able to get through their meetings in a few hours, a couple of times a month.
Mhm.
So the fact that we weren't is also, I think, an indication that there was something that was broken.
That wasn't working right.
It wasn't working.
Yep, agreed, 100%, 100%.
One of those things where it wasn't okay to ask questions.
Right.
And that is fundamentally, structurally, in terms of getting good outcomes, is to be able to answer those questions, right? And it is completely aligned with what you were saying, right? That's how you get a CEO that's running the board and everything is upside down.
Mhm.
Yep, if you can't ask questions. Hard ones or not hard ones, but the questions that we have. So I think that's related to the time, like
Yeah.
that pressure. I know that I have felt that pressure of, you know, but I have a question, but I don't ask the question because I don't wanna be told I'm running over time and
I know,
Yeah.
it's hard, cause 2 hours is not a lot of time, twice a month, I mean, we only meet 2 hours once a month. And we do tend to go over 30 minutes, sometimes even an hour, and I always feel as a chair, like, I failed, like, we should have kept it to 2 hours, and the superintendent said, you know what? You meet once a month, so if you go to 3 hours, you're not doing a bad job. One thing in terms of time management, I could suggest is read those board packets and really digest them as much as you can ahead of time. And if you already have questions before the board meeting, try to get those questions answered before you get to the board meeting. Because that will save so much time. Now, sometimes those questions are really important to be asked in at the meeting. So everybody, all the board members, for the benefit of the board and your public. But sometimes there's just something that I know that not other people are gonna be interested in knowing, but I just wanna know for myself, I'll ask the superintendent or the business manager ahead of time, because it saves time.
Even if it's a question that you will want to be asked
In the meeting.
you can still
True.
kind of start that conversation.
It avoids that gotcha,
beforehand.
that
Yeah,
surprise too,
exactly,
yeah,
and then
absolutely.
you can
I'm
be
gonna
able
be
to-
asking this question,
Mhm.
you know, so Joe, I'm gonna be asking this question on Monday. You know, just so you know, and so that he can have the information he needs to answer the question, because he may not
Exactly.
bring it with him.
But help bring that time down.
Yeah,
Also, and I had a good discussion the other day about when, emailing questions back and forth, and if any of you email me a question, I will always respond to everybody, so you know what that question, unless it's what time's the football game, right? But if it's something substantive, I will email everybody, knowing you guys know, we can't have discussion about this outside of the board, but I want people to know what the questions are in case you have those same questions.
yep, absolutely.
I don't have the notes, but we were at the retreat or the conference that we just went to. There, it was the school superintendent and the board chair that got up and they spoke about what had happened. I think it was Heath Laura. You remember that one?
Oh, yeah.
And one of the things that resonated with me was when they were talking about specific things, and this is more perhaps of a burden on the superintendent, but what they had said was they would reach out and ask if there was particularly complicated information that might be coming individually to the board and say, like, do you have any questions on this? Like, are there any questions that you may have? So it's not like just the assumption that, hey, we're gonna give you the material a week in advance, you're gonna review it and be all set to go.
Mhm.
But I think having that dialogue and having that connection is also okay. would
I
just-
remember that too. I thought, poor superintendent, that's a lot of
That's a
emails
lot.
to have to send, but you
But
know?
it depends on, I guess, what the topic is.
Yeah,
That you're not gonna have to do it every time, but it
No.
depends. If
And-
it's a,
and with a relatively new board, with lots of new board members, that might be a more efficient use of the superintendent's time than coming to the board meeting to talk about the budget when there's gonna be lots of questions. I don't know.
but it also comes back to the relationship building.
It
Because
does.
that's another opportunity for that touch point for that relationship
Yeah.
building to happen.
Yeah.
So, but it's interesting that we've talked about the concept of new board members a few times,
Yep,
and I think there is an argument that a board member should never become so read in and such an expert that they know what the superintendent's talking about almost without having to have it explained to them, because they're breaking the ability for the public to follow what's going
True.
on. And so
good
it's like,
point.
yesterday, we were in a superintendent interview process. And somebody asked a question like, what does the community think about academic performance?
Mhm.
And, you know, and they said something like along the lines of, you know, because, you know, we can ask you, you're an informed perspective, on the board.
Mhm.
And I said, well, actually, like, I'm an uninformed perspective, like, I'm not an educational expert. And I don't wanna, so it's like, it's just related to the CLA and to the terminology, it's like. If we could preserve long-term where we are now, in the sense of having to ask questions about everything, every time. That is gonna help the community members who call in every week, because. We're not being like, oh, yeah, I remember you told me about that last time. It's like, we should always ask the question of like, what is this basic thing that needs to be repeated? So, new board member, there's some bad things about it, but there's also some good things
Some
about it.
benefits to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah. So keep asking those questions. Keep saying those very powerful words, I don't know. There's no shame in that. If you don't know the answer, you can refer the person to the person that does know the answer. So there's no shame in that. We are not,
Builds credibility.
it absolutely.
Ironically.
I know, ironically, yeah, you're
But I
absolutely
just,
right.
you know, I've been watching for
Yeah.
years now, and the way that you have all responded has been incredible in that capacity. I think it is building trust.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not gonna be absolute, it never will be absolute, because there's always a suspicion
I love that.
of something, right? But
I don't know, the three most powerful,
Yeah.
five most, I'm sorry, I was wrong.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? Those
yeah.
important to be able to say that.
Absolutely. And you make that part of your regular conversations and you guys will be in great shape. And we're gonna wrap up now. Just letting you know there's extra resources out there for you to continue your learning. I'm gonna check on the students' access to our webinar, website to make sure you have access to all of our toolkits, that which would be helpful. Seamus already knows about our board chair. Who's your vice chair, Laura? So there's a board chair, but Jen, you are, sorry. Jen. She's the clerk, okay, so there's a chair, vice chair form every 6 weeks, which I think is very beneficial to chairs, and those dates just went up on the website for 2026. The webinar schedule will be coming out at the end of the month. You'll be getting a membership guide in the mail, all of you as board members, and Joe, you will too, which shows all the dates of the conference next year, all the webinar dates and topics. You know, our Tuesday newsletter comes out every Tuesday. So just give yourselves a lot of grace and know that the learning never stops. I mean, it truly never does. And there's no shame in that. And reach out if you need us for anything, okay? So thank you very much for coming on a Saturday.
Thank you
I
for
hope
coming
this
on
was
Saturday.
helpful. Yeah. Okay.
Everybody, this is a great discussion. I really am very thankful for the board to be so thoughtful.
Yeah, and it is just so nice, the feeling in the room, I just have to say,
Yeah.
it's just been a very pleasant morning and, just great to be able to build trust and relationships and just feel comfortable together, so.
Yeah, really good. And thank you for the bread.
Can I say thank you to Ali and Lynn for coming in?
These two are amazing.
Yeah, you guys are impressive, you're really impressive. Appreciate you guys being here, especially on the weekend.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question while we're all together, actually? Let's do it.
Can I give you a little bit of personal feedback?
Yes.
You are always allowed to ask questions.
Well,
Any context you're in where you're
Yes.
not allowed to ask questions, like, why are you there?
well,
They don't deserve
I'll
you.
give you the
So
background
just
of
always ask.
being on the
Please.
board last year was a very different experience than being on the board this year and asking questions. I asked probably more questions in the first week of this year than I did all of last
So do
year.
you feel?
So it's yes, it feels like a change for me though of having to grow into being comfortable asking.
That's fair.
Yeah,
So,
that's
so I am trying. One of my questions is, I had emailed Joe Clark and Seamus about this, but we're having a student come talk about student representative voting at the meeting this coming Wednesday, and we only have 10 minutes allotted within the meeting time. And I know it's a really busy meeting on Wednesday. Is there any way we can get an extra 10 minutes so that you guys can discuss a little bit with the student who's coming and us?
So I think that's an appropriate question because it's scheduling.
Yeah.
Okay.
And, we can, are we fine with changing or with adding more time to it?
Do you have to
10 minutes of my superintendent's
No,
report.
not.
do you have to do a motion or anything, or can we just say, yes, it's fine?
I think for scheduling, we don't have to do anything.
A change of scheduling at the meeting,
Have you
Yeah.
warned your agenda?
Yeah,
It's been warned, so you'll,
you have to
Do
do
it
that.
during the meeting. Why don't we just do it during the
Yeah.
meeting?
Yeah,
If there's
at
any
the
change to the agenda, and we
And
can
then-
change the agenda at that time and
Even if they were
Add
adding
more
10
add more
minutes
time
to
to,
this.
Mhm.
yeah.
So on like a meeting by meeting basis, if it's just that like small time, it's okay if me and Moment bring it up the day of.
yeah,
And not email you guys.
yeah, I think we have many opportunities to fix schedules when they are out of alignment with what's necessary. Like, there's no like. Open meeting law allows us to always talk scheduling, and so like it was appropriate for you to send the email. And it's also appropriate for you to bring it up in the moment.
Is it a potential solution to just always set it at 20 minutes? You guys can take what you need, and if you only take 5 or 10, the rest of the time we can move on to the next thing. That way we don't, Ally and Moment don't have to request more time for their discussion.
how often does it happen where you need more than 10 minutes?
Rare.
Rare.
Okay.
Yeah.
Delina, has good, estimates of how long everything takes.
Okay.
I've noticed.
And to be honest, I'm not even sure you need a motion to extend that part of the agenda. It's not like you're introducing a new topic.
Right.
The topic's already there.
Fair point.
Yeah, you just, I mean, you could, one thing we say at the beginning of our meeting when we open it is, here's the agenda. Does anybody have any, do you think the right amount of time has been allotted to each agenda item? That's the question, that we have 4 questions we ask at the start of each meeting, and then nobody ever says, oh, nobody really has anything to say, but that I can think of you all saying, well, actually, we need 10 extra minutes. Could we have that? Yeah,
Did you have a second question?
No, I said,
good question though. All right. All right, go about your business, go about your fun weekend, whatever's left of it. Enjoy.
Minute or so.
Yeah.
Yeah, you.
Thank you very much, Debbie.
You're-
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you all very much.
I would entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Second.
Jen motions, Dan seconds. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
The meeting's adjourned.